Hello, everybody. Just to kind of touch base before we start the video, I didn't get a chance to film a intro live, so I'm kind of adding it in here post conversation. So going forward, I will kind of do an intro, before we start. But this video does kind of just drop us right in, so just so you're aware. But yeah, I hope that you enjoy it. It is rather long. And I do plan on kind of cutting it up a little bit and doing some other videos with it. But I think it is very important to hear the entire conversation as well as the readings. So just to kind of let you know a little bit of the structure, we read through the first 5 chapters of Genesis, talk about it a little bit, read through the next 5 chapters, so verses 6 through 10, and then we talk about that as well. And then, we kind of go on for a little while and make some really groundbreaking, um, eye-opening discoveries. And some of them you may know, some of them you may not have. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And the Roch Elom was hovering upon the surface of the water. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good. So God distinguished the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So there was evening and there was morning, one day. Then God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the water. Let it be for separating water from water." So God made the expanse, and it separated the water that was below the expanse from the water that was over the expanse. And it happened so. God called the expanse sky. So there was evening and there was morning, a second day. Then God said, "Let the water below the sky be gathered to one place. Let the dry ground appear." And so it happened. Oh, I'm sorry. And it happened so. God called the dry ground land, and the collection of the water he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land sprout grass, green plants yielding seed, fruit trees making fruit, each according to its species, with seed in it, upon the land." And it happened so. The land brought forth grass, green plants yielding seed, each according to its species, and trees making fruit with the seed in it, each according to its species. And God saw that it was good. So there was evening and there was morning, a third day. Then God said, "Let lights in the expanse of the sky be for separating the day from the night. There will be 4 signs and 4 seasons, 4 days and years. They will be for lights in the expanse of the sky to shine upon the land." And it happened so. Then God made the 2 great lights, the greater light for dominion over the day, and the lesser light as well as the stars for dominion over the night. God set them in the expanse of the sky to shine on the land, and to have dominion over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw it was good. So there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. Then God said, "Let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures. Let flying creatures fly above the land across the expanse of the sky." Then God created the large sea creatures and every living creature that crawls, with which the water swarms, according to their species, as well as every winged flying creature according to their species. And God saw that it was good. Then God blessed them by saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the water in the seas. Let the flying creatures multiply on the land." So there was evening and there was morning, a fifth day. Then God said, "Let the land bring forth living creatures according to their species, livestock, crawling creatures, and wild animals, according to their species." And it happened so. God made the wild animals according to their species, the livestock according to their species, and everything that crawls on the ground, each according to its species. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Let them rule over the fish of the sea, over the flying creatures of the sky, over the livestock, over the whole earth, and over every crawling creature that crawls on the land. God created humankind in his image, and in the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, fill the land and conquer it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the flying creatures of the sky, and over every animal that crawls on the land. Then God said, I have just given you every green plant yielding seed that is on the surface of the whole land, and every tree which has the fruit of a tree yielding seed. They are to be food for you. Also, for every wild animal, every flying creature of the sky, every creature that crawls on the land which has life, every green plant is to be for food. And it happened so. So God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. So there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day.
Right. Stampy, you want to go or you want me to pick it up?
I can go. I can go.
Okay.
I got you. Let me. I gotta click and go. Genesis 2. There we go. So the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed. On the seventh day, God had completed his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, for on it he rested from all his work of creation. These are the records of the heavens and the earth concerning their creation. At the time that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, no shrub of the field had yet grown on the land, and no plant of the field had yet sprouted, for the Lord God had not made it rain on the land, and there was no man to work the ground. But mist would come up from the earth and water all the ground. Then the Lord formed the man out of the dust from the ground and breathed the breath of life into his nostrils, and the man became a living being. The Lord God planted a garden in Eden, in the east, and there he placed the man he had formed. The Lord God caused to grow out of the ground every tree pleasing in appearance and good for food, including the tree of life in the middle of the garden, as well as the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A river went out from Eden to water the garden. From there it divided and became the source of four rivers. The name of the first is Pishon, which flows from the entire land of Havilah, where there is gold. Gold from that land is pure. Bdellium and onyx are also there. The name of the second river is Gihon, which flows through the entire land of Cush. The name of the third river is Tigris, which runs east of Assyria, and the fourth river is the Euphrates. The Lord God took the man and placed him in the Garden of Eden to work it and watch over it. And the Lord God commanded the man, You are free to eat from any tree of the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For on that day you eat from it, you will certainly die. Then the Lord God said, It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper corresponding to him. The Lord God formed out of the ground every wild animal and every bird of the sky, and brought each to the man to see what he would call it. And whatever the man called a living creature, that was its name. And the man gave names to all the livestock, to the birds of the sky, and to every wild animal. But for the man, no helper was found corresponding to him. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to come over the man, and he slept. God took one of his ribs and closed the flesh at that place. Then God made the rib that he had taken from the man into a woman and brought her to the man. And the man said, this one, at last, is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. This one will be called woman, for she was taken from man. This is why a man leaves his father and mother and bonds with his wife, and they become one flesh. Both the man and his wife were naked, yet felt no shame.
Mm. Mm.
Read.
All right. place. I was typing. Sorry.
Very good.
It's chapter 3. Now the serpent was the most cunning of all the wild animals that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God really say you can't eat from any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat the fruit from the trees in the garden, but about the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden, God said you must not eat. Eat it or touch it, or you will die." "No, you will certainly not die," the serpent said to the woman. "In fact, God knows that when you eat it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." The woman saw that the tree was good for food and delightful to look at, and that it was desirable for obtaining wisdom. So she took some of its fruit and ate it. She also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Sin's consequences. Then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden at the time of the evening breeze. And they hid from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. So the Lord God called out to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" And he said, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." Then he asked, "Who told you that you were naked? Did you eat from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" The man replied, "The woman you gave to be with me, she gave me some of the fruit from the tree, and I ate." So the Lord God asked the woman, "What have you done?" And the woman said, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." So the Lord God said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, you are cursed more than any livestock, and more than any wild animal. You will move on your belly and eat dust all the days of your life. I will put hostility between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. So he will strike your head, and you will strike his heel." He said to the woman, "I will intensify your labor pains. You will bear children with painful effort. Your desire will be for your husband, yet he will rule over you." And he said to the man, "Because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, do not eat from it. The ground is cursed because of you. You will eat from it by means of painful labor all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. You will eat bread by the sweat of your brow until you return to the ground, since you were taken from it. For you are dust, and you will return to dust." The man named his wife, because she was the mother of all the living. The Lord God made clothing from the skins of the man and his wife, and he clothed them. The Lord God said, "Since the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, he must not reach out, take from the tree of life, eat, and live forever." So the Lord God sent him away from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he was taken. He drove the man out and stationed the cherubim and the flaming, whirling sword east of the Garden of Eden to guard the way to the tree of life.
All right, chapter 4, Cain and Abel's blood. I don't know if you guys have the footnotes or the subtitles, but I'm just reading them. Now the man had relations with Eve, his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, "I pronounce a man with Adonai." Then she gave birth again to his brother Abel. Abel became a shepherd of flocks, while Cain became a worker of the ground. So it happened after some time that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to Adonai, which Abel he also brought of the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. Now Adonai looked favorably upon Abel and his offering, but upon Cain and his offering he did not look favorably. Cain became very angry, and his countenance fell. Excuse me. Then Adonai said to Cain, "Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, it will lift. But if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the doorway. Its desire is for you, but you must master it." Cain spoke to Abel his brother. While they were in the field, Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and killed him. Then Adonai said to Cain, "Where is Abel, your brother?" "I don't know," he said. Am I my brother's keeper?" Then he said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. So now cursed are you from the ground which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. As often as you work the ground, it will not yield its crops to you again. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Cain said to Adonai, "My iniquity is too great to bear. Since you expelled me today from the face of the ground, and I must be hidden from your presence, then I will be a restless wanderer on the earth. Anyone who finds me will kill me." But Adonai said to him, "In that case, anyone who kills Cain is to be avenged 7 times over." So Adonai put a mark on Cain, so that anyone who found him would not strike him down. Then Cain left Adonai's presence and dwelled in the land of wandering, east of Eden. Cain was intimate with his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. And he was building a city, and he named the city after the name of his son, Enoch. And to Enoch was born Irad. Irad fathered Mehulah, and Mehulah fathered Methuselah, and Methuselah fathered Lamech. Now Lamech took for himself 2 wives. The name of the first one was Adah, and the name of the second one was Zillah. Adah gave birth to Jabal, and he was the pioneer of tent dwellers with livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the pioneer of all who skillfully handle stringed instruments and wind instruments. Now Zillah also gave birth to Tubal Cain, the forger of every kind of bronze and iron tools. Tubal Cain's sister was Naamah. Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, "Hear my voice. Lamech's wives, listen to my speech. For I have killed a man for wounding me, and a boy for bruising me. If Cain is to be avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times." Adam was intimate with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son. She named him Seth. For God has appointed me another seed to place of Abel, in place of Abel, since Cain killed him. To Seth also was born a son. He named him Enosh. And then people began to call on Adonai's name.
Alrighty. This is the document containing the family records of Adam. On the day that God created man, he made him in the likeness of God, and he created them male and female. When they were created, he blessed them and called them mankind. Adam was 130 years old when he fathered a son in his likeness, according to his image, and named him Seth. Adam lived 800 years after he fathered Seth, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Adam's life lasted 930 years, then he died. Seth was 105 when he fathered Enosh. Seth lived 807 years after he fathered Enosh, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Seth's life lasted 912 years, then he died. Enosh was 90 years when he fathered Kenan. Enosh lived 815 years after he fathered Kenan, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Enosh's life lasted 905 years, then he died. Kenan was 70 years old when he fathered Mahalalel, and Kenan lived 840 years after he fathered Mahalalel, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Kenan's life lasted 910 years, then he died. Mahalalel was 65 years old when he fathered Jared. Mahalalel lived 830 years after he fathered Jared, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Mahalalel's life lasted 895 years, then he died. Jared was 162 years old when he fathered Enoch. Jared lived 800 years after he fathered Enoch, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Jared's life lasted 962 years. Then he died. Enoch was 65 years old when he fathered Methuselah. And after he fathered Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years and fathered other sons and daughters. So Enoch's life lasted. Enoch's life lasted. I lost my place. 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and then he was not there because God took him. Methuselah was 187 years old when he fathered Lamech. Methuselah lived 782 years after he fathered Lamech, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Methuselah's life lasted 969 years. Then he died. Lamech was 182 years old when he fathered a son. He named him Noah, saying, "This one will bring us relief from the agonizing labors of our hands, caused by the ground the Lord has cursed." Lamech lived 595 years after he fathered Noah, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Lamech's life lasted 777 years. Then he died. Noah was 500 years old when he fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
Dang, that's crazy to hear those numbers. Like to think about
It makes
becoming
me,
a father at 500 years old. That's crazy.
yeah, and it definitely makes me wonder because I know that people have talked about how the age regression and stuff. So, I mean, no matter how you take it, it's definitely a lot longer than probably than our lifespan is. But yeah, definitely crazy. I wonder how they tracked time back then.
Right. Yeah, it could be something even like that, right? Like, who knows what?
'Cause-
Like, time is relative, right? So, even
Yeah.
like even nowadays, right? Like, our calendar is different than like the Jewish calendar, or or like the extreme example is like North Korea. It's only like the year like 38 or some stuff
No,
like that, or something crazy, isn't it?
yeah, I heard there's a country in Africa that doesn't even use the same calendar the rest of the world uses.
Yeah. Same with North Korea. They started their time, if I remember correctly, from when Kim Jong Un's father, or maybe his grandfather, like rose to power. So like,
So that's when
we're
they
not
started
very far in
tracking time.
history at all. Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's
it
like
makes
that's
sense.
when time started for them, essentially, or some crazy stuff like that.
I
if
got
remember
you.
correctly, but-
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well,
So-
Stampy, I got to give it to you in that last chapter, man. That was a lot of names.
Right, yeah,
I know
I got smashed.
Methuselah was said like that. It was like 25 times, so that's like one of the most.
And Mahala, I don't know. You said it,
Mahalalel?
dude. You said it.
Yeah,
God
I think
forgive
it's
me, dude. I gotta be
pronounced
honest.
Methuselah. Looking at it?
No.
Mahalalel.
Oh,
No,
that
the
other
other
one.
one.
The other one.
Halalel. Dude,
Halalel,
when he
yeah.
said it, you said it perfectly like almost every time, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I chuckled the first time you said it because I was
Yeah, I was
coming up with this crazy name. Like I didn't know how to say it, but you did it. It was awesome.
Yeah, they definitely had some
Methuselah.
unique names back
There's
then.
two of them that.
Methuselah, I believe, is how you pronounce it.
Methuselah's
That one got me, and then which one? When I first it went through my head, and my brain's like, how do I even try?
Yeah, the names are interesting.
Uh,
Oh my! Just say this. Yeah, it says the same thing. So.
One thing I think is kind of crazy is like how I never really understood the punishments that um, Adam's immediate family received, right? Like I remember the one, the birthing pains of the woman and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
when Cain, struck his brother Abel, and he was cursed that he would not reap, from the ground. He says, "You are cursed from the ground, which opened its mouth. So as often as you work the ground, it will not yield its crops to you again.
Yeah.
You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." It's crazy because
You.
it also says in the chapter you read, and he named when Noah was born, when Lamech gave birth, or he didn't give birth, but when he fathered him, it says that this one will comfort us from our work and from the pain of our hands because of the ground which Adonai cursed.
Yeah.
So this was, I would like to say, I believe this would be thousands of years later, right? Is what it seems like, because I mean, all these guys are dying around 905. I mean, I don't know how fast, but
Yeah, I definitely have to sit here because a lot of them seem to be might have been birthed overlapping.
Yeah,
that's
of
what I'm
Because
course.
thinking.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
they're father
yeah.
and sons, right? So
I mean, well,
presumably
yeah,
their
yeah.
grandfathers. So
So what? He was
there's definitely
105
some
when he
overlap there, but it's probably close to 1,000 years, give or take.
since Adam.
Yeah.
So what, Lamech lived 595 after he fathered Noah. He was 777 years when he died. So you just subtract that to
You
get.
just add up all
I
the
could do
first
this for the
numbers when
sake
they
of this.
fathered.
I can do
You
this.
add up, 105, 90, 70, 65, 162, 65, 300. Yeah, it's definitely 1,000. Uh, but either way, I mean, they were. Well, I'm actually excited to read and kind of get into Noah because I'm not. I guess I don't know if that was like he was prophesying that when Lamech gave when he fathered Noah. Was it did he actually kind of relieve that curse which the Lord placed? But man, even I could imagine you know having to go through that. And I just never realized that. I've never acknowledged that curse that he placed.
I don't. It sucked
It's
to be king to work your entire
1,056
Yeah,
life,
years.
work your
yeah, right.
entire life, and not be able to reap anything. You'd have to take handouts and other. I mean, he'd have to hunt animal. I mean, I would assume since he couldn't,
Yeah,
he wouldn't be able to farm because that's what he was doing before.
According
But
to this, it's 1,100 years.
1100 years over the
About
time
it's
span.
1,056 from the point of the
that's
Bible starts dating the years of Adam until the birth of Noah.
Yeah.
it's
So
crazy how long they lived too. So they were, eh, you know, they were going through this for almost 1,000 years. Some of these people, like Enosh and um,
and
Canaan, and
I bet the probably I feel like I want to say like their lifespan could have like the quality of the earth was hasn't been ran down just yet by mankind as it is like right now. Or at least that's one of the things that I think of when you compare the lifespans if this is equatable because I mean just in living in a small little town and or city the amount of chemicals and toxic fumes that we breathe in on a daily basis from your own vehicle all the way from the plastic processing plants and stuff like that. I mean, I would assume since this is early mankind that the world is practically clean compared to now.
hmm
And so the body that God has given us is like I would say what is the term I'm looking for? I don't know what term I'm looking for, but just like it's the original body, clean in all of its perfection that it was supposed to be in before all the stuff that we've done to it
oh
gets
yeah,
ruined.
yeah. I think we have incrementally become. Um, I mean, I don't without getting too like I guess would you say conspiracy theory. I think that a lot of the stuff that we digest is there's a lot of greed involved, and when greed and money are involved with these big corporations that are kind of feeding us, they're whittling out farmers, right? And
Hmm.
they're 100% putting I wouldn't say garbage, but they're putting things in our body. We're putting things, we're consuming things that they're providing us that are definitely not doing anything for our body. I mean, it's there's some I've experienced some really weird things like throughout the years that just kind of like really opened my mind to that. Like, dude, it. We're definitely not consuming things that I mean, obviously we can be healthy and try to be healthy, but McDonald's is definitely not helping out your immune system
No,
or
yeah,
your digestive system. You know.
the amount the different things they add to stuff, and on top of that, the large probably we take in a lot
Hmm.
more, like we at least here I would say in our society we take in a lot more sugar, a lot more salt, which is definitely not good for the cardiovascular system and for
Mm.
your digestive system because you can artificially make yourself diabetic consuming too much sugar,
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
and so just it's just a whole lot of different things when it comes to the human dietary needs that we kind of just shot ourselves in the foot with.
Oh yeah, man. I definitely want to get to a more self-sufficient state in the future. Um, One thing I do want to kind of point out, just something that I kind of enjoyed was I really enjoyed, for one, reading chapter one. Um, kind of like I know this is a vast sum, but it would just be a crazy. Imagine just like watching like in a theater, like or being able to float up to the heavens and watch God create everything. I think that would be so cool. Um, but then also too, just to see how much, even from these short chapters, uh, trying to put myself in the position of Adam and Eve, be given all of these things, and I liked how whenever you know Adam didn't just get placed into the Garden of Eden. It's like, okay, here's this, here's this, here's that. These are the rules you got to follow. Like God also allowed him to kind of be creative and learn about these animals and name them. Like it even said in that so the man gave names to all the livestock and the flying creatures of the sky and to the animals of the field, but for the man he did not find a well matched helper for him. But it was just cool to see that God gave him, and then as he gave him all the opportunity to learn and kind of be creative, and then once he like I guess he noticed like like being with Adam, seeing that he was naming all these pairs, female and male, he kind of saw that he I don't know if he would say he saw pity on him, but he was just definitely there to give Adam whatever he needed. He loved Adam, obviously, and it's obvious from these scriptures that he cared very much about his creation, and um, and it also kind of reminds me of just how sneaky the devil can be, right? Because you get all of these things. You have a loving God and a beautiful creation. You just kind of woke up. Now you have this beautiful woman that God gave you, made in your likeness. I mean, it's you have all of these things going for you, but the devil still found his way to sneak in there and deceive. And I've heard other. I feel like Genesis, these chapters are just giving us kind of a gist of the story, right? I know there's obviously so many more details, uh, kind of with the timeline and how it happened. And I've heard before that um, it took 3 times for the devil to actually convince Eve. Um, I don't know how credible that is, but just kind of shows even when you're got all these blessings and stuff, that you gotta still have your guard up, especially now as like we mentioned, imperfect humans that have come so far from that body that God originally created us to have.
I definitely agree, and I think it also I think the first couple of chapters, at least chapter two, when it talks about the fall. I think chapter two. Hold on, let me see. Which one is the fall?
Three,
Yeah, sin. Oh, three. Yeah. So when three talks about the fall of mankind, I think it also answers some of the questions people have. For example, one thing you probably hear a lot all the time is, um, if God knows everything, is there such thing as a free will?
right?
Or like, um, why did God allow evil to exist and stuff like this? And I think like one of the things that you can see, like if there was no, if Satan or the serpent or whatever wasn't in the Garden of Eden, and they had nothing, they had no other alternate choice, would they even have an ability to exercise free will? Because free will is the ability to make your own choice, right? But if you don't have a choice, that's not, that's the definition of free will, right? So I feel like
Right.
in essence of God allowing Satan to be in the Garden of Eden, he gives them the opportunity to then exercise good or bad without the knowledge of it, to
Hmm.
begin, because God wanted things to pick him, or I think God designed us in a way to exercise free will.
Yeah. And
Um,
to kind of make a point, not to interrupt, but to make a point on that, just how true, like I feel that naturally, like as a father, like I will know the answer. I might know that, my youngest, spilled all the Cheerios, right? But I'm still gonna ask her. You know, I'm not gonna just go say, I know you did this, but I'll ask like, hey, did you spill those Cheerios? Like, or let's say, she wrote on the wall or something. I'll ask her, and for both my kids, and then even knowing the truth, maybe knowing that, yeah, they did do bad. um, I still want to give them that opportunity to be truthful and be honest, and do the right thing. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Without me just jumping to conclusions just because I already know what happened. And it's kind of the same thing with learning. You got to let your kids learn, even if you know what's going to happen. If they touch that warm pot, like, hey, that's warm. Don't if you want to touch it, you can touch it, right? Obviously, I wouldn't let my kid burn themselves, but you know what I'm saying. Like, there's just certain things that you, as a father, you kind of know, but you
Oh yeah,
still want to see the good in your kid. You want to see them exercise that, like you said, and make good decisions. Um,
yeah. You want
and I
them to
think that
make
could
the
be relative.
No, it's definitely relative because at first and foremost, I mean, God is a parent. I mean, the Bible
Yeah,
makes Bible makes the connection that we are all children of God, and
yeah.
God is a father. So I mean, so he I definitely think he looks at us like my dad always tells me all the time that once you become a father, you will then understand God more.
Hmm.
Because that's why the connections you were making between you and your child. And
Right, right,
I
right.
mean, three. I
I
mean, as much as three sucks, three is beautiful at the same time.
Well, yeah, right. I kind of wonder. So, curiosity is when Cain, I believe that was in chapter 4. Yeah, chapter 4, when Adonai put the mark on Cain so that anyone. This is in verse 15.
Hmm.
Put the mark on Cain so that anyone who found him would not strike him down, which is, for me, is already crazy, right? Because um he just killed his brother.
Yeah.
I mean, God could have easily snapped his fingers and just poof, right? But he doesn't do that. In fact, he expels him. He punishes him, but he even puts a mark on him so that they wouldn't kill him. And anyone that does kill him is to be avenged 7 times over, which is, to me, is a type of mercy and just I just don't quite understand. But either way, he puts the mark on Cain, and then it says, then Cain left Adonai's presence and dwelled in the land of wandering east of Eden. I wonder if that's like, just curious, is that him, like, as in back then there, I know people maybe didn't see God. I don't know. Because I've always wondered that, like, that were people able to, obviously they were speaking to him. I mean,
I
was this metaphorically, or
I
is this
I
he
think
actually left?
I think that because of the euphemisms that they always praise on the fact that God's presence is somewhere,
Yeah.
and then the way that Adam reacts to God in His presence, I think it's more of a feeling when it comes to the Lord, and at least in these first chapters, rather than visual representation. Because
Hmm.
I mean, even throughout the entire Bible, it talks about God's presence coming in and leaving people. So I feel like it's not so much as seeing with your eyes as it is like seeing with your heart, if that makes sense.
I
And
guess you're right, because Jesus even said, "For no man has seen God." Right.
yeah, and then when it comes, I think when it because the Jews get the law when it talks about an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, before to in their that the law that God gave them. But I think at the very beginning, God never intended us to be killing each other. That's why Cain gets punished. And even when someone does something wrong, he did not intend for people to avenge once again through murder to, and that's why there would be the punishment on the person that would then kill Cain if they were to. I think
Mm,
because I think at the end of the day, God reserves that right to make, and well, not make in a sense, but he's the creator, but then also he reserves the right to extinguish life on Earth. And so
right.
I don't think it was ever mankind's place to. I mean, obviously we have people that we shouldn't let around other people, right? And that's why we have penitentiaries and stuff. But I don't think
Yeah.
it was never intended our right to decide the time for others to lay their lives down.
Right. Right.
So,
I
but I
agree.
mean, but
It's a good
obviously
point.
God sees that people struggles with that. So like that's why when you read later on when we get there, he makes the laws of conforming to human understanding, even though I don't think, but that he probably agreed with it.
Right. Right. Well, I mean that does make sense. I mean, as a young kid, as a father, I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. My 2-year-old, well, she's not even 2 yet. She's like almost 2, but the rules for her are different than the rules for my 4-year-old. Without trying to be too unfair, right? But there's just certain things that my youngest can't do, or there's certain things I might trust my older one to do that I don't trust my younger one to do. I'm the rules for my oldest when teaching manners and how to talk to people because she speaks and stuff like that. Um, I mean, they both speak, but my oldest talks a lot more.
Hmm.
Talks a lot more well, and so they're different, right? And so I understand
Yeah.
that, like the rules he gave to humans, like okay, this isn't maybe exactly how he may have originally wanted it, but it's what he's got. It's the best for them now, right?
Yeah.
In the state they're in.
Yeah, and I think it's a way to guide them because I feel like God knows everything, so He knows that like if He was to maybe be too hard on one aspect, it might push them over the edge. So He gives them leniency, so it kind of works towards where He wanted, while still appeasing towards mankind at the same time. So like
Right,
the
right,
same way like when you like he's talking about when it comes to your child and the way you teach them, you might not always be one way or the other.
right.
Um, yeah, I
I don't
think
know. I think I have different perspectives
Yeah,
on
yeah. Please,
just about all of that, to be honest.
that's okay.
Not to say that your guys, yeah, it's just my perspective of reading it and just
that's great.
seeing it, right?
Make the truth your own, right? That's
So, as far as I'll start here, right? So, I'll start with, I'll start at the beginning, I guess. Um,
yeah.
so
Good
I
place to
think
start.
that the first 5 chapters are really it's just a story about the fall of man, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think because it's a story about the fall of man, it kind of sets everything up for everything that happens in those chapters and really the rest of Genesis, right? So I look at it like this, right? So Adam is in the Garden of Eden and Eve is there with him,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
That's pinnacle, peak man, peak woman, right? They are perfect in every sense of the word, right? They're not capable of sin, more or less at that point, up until they're obviously deceived. Um, and once they are deceived, and that seal is metaphorically broken, right? Um, it kind of it's the beginning of the end, so to speak, right? Uh, and even the Bible says that it wasn't the original plan, it wasn't the original intention for this to happen as it did. Um, Obviously, God being God, he I would say that he knew that it was going to happen, right? Because I don't think that he's linearly tied in time. Um, so I mean, I guess as far as that, I think, like I was saying, I think the story is about the fall of man. I think that explains why. Um, that explains the difference in lifespan, um, right? Because you kind of have this progression, right? It starts with they take a bite of the apple and they realize, they have this knowledge of good and evil now, and they have, um, all these things that they're learning, because of that, realizing they're naked, etc. And then that kind of culminates as time goes on with Cain becoming jealous, right? So you've got other, and I'm sure the enemy was in some small or large part a part of that as well. Um, to deceive Cain again, um, to make man fall further from the grace of God. And as we fall more and more victim to what is now our nature, and we fall further and further away from the grace of God, we start to, our lives become shorter as the result of not living good, virtuous lives. Right? We're further from God, and our lives. I mean, look at our lives now compared to compared to then.
Yeah.
So
That would definitely make sense, because because that definitely makes sense when it comes to the lifespan. What I was just suggesting a theory, I guess, technically.
No, yeah.
I
don't think my theory is
yours,
right necessarily.
well,
I just,
yours sounds a whole lot more, it sounds more grounded, especially when you take the Bible as a whole, because you see people, the body, the spirit, and the soul of a human being just flourishes more in the presence of God than without it. Just like that's just undeniable fact throughout the entire Bible. We always do better with Him around.
Yeah, I think it's
So
I definitely
it's
think
not
it's
a stretch to. It's definitely not a stretch to think, well, since as mankind gets further away from Him, our lifespan on this planet gets shorter as well.
Right, and our burdens become greater as well, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there's studies nowadays that the more stressed you are, the shorter your lifespan, right? So he curses the ground, right? So we have to work so much harder to get anything out of the ground. It says that the ground is filled with thorns and thistles. So I think that's
It's funny you say
that
that, because even with all the modern technology, there's still tons of places around the world that struggles to maintain proper um, feeding habits.
I mean, we have
I guess you could say.
Like the entirety of the modern farming industries is predicated on Russia, more or less, right? Because they're the largest producer of chemical fertilizer in the world. So without those, we can't possibly sustain the population like we have today. So
that'd be crazy.
We have to constantly create things, which it's interesting. It's kind of a blessing and a curse, right? Because without eating from the tree, we could never create something to be able to allow that. But also, we would never have to if we'd never had. So, it's but, and I guess so on the Cain part, I would say, right. Obviously, the population is much smaller back then. So I would think that it would almost be more punishing for Cain to stay alive and to have to wander the earth amongst people who undoubtedly hate him, because they're the reason. He's the reason for, well, like, not the entirety, but for part of man's fall, right? So I can only imagine that would be, as far as punishments go, that's, imagine walking around 800 years amongst people who just loathe you everywhere.
Yeah, even in chapter 4, verse 13, it says, Cain said to Adonai, my iniquity also, or it says punishment, is too great to bear, right? Because he realized what happened. You know what I mean? Like, he realized, like you said, Matt, like basically exactly what you said. He knew what was going to happen, being surrounded by people that are going to hate him, that also live for. I mean, shoot, it's easy for a person that lives to 70 to hold grudges. Imagine living to 900. You know what I mean?
And being a part of a
dealing
community
with
where everybody
same
knows everybody, presumably.
Yep.
And they all know, like, you're the reason I gotta break my back out here just to scrape by. So. Yeah, I would imagine he wasn't too popular. And while they may not have killed him, I'm sure God didn't say, well, I'll put a mark on you to where they'll treat you like rainbows and butterflies either. So I'm sure they were pretty rough with him, just not killing him. So,
I agree.
That's my take on it anyways. I think the punishment is fitting.
Yeah, he probably got
I agree. I agree.
probably did. But
That's why I mentioned too, like some of the like I know God is extremely just,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
for my imperfect mind, it's easy to look at something and simply to be at awe of the fact that God is so much just wiser and in my mind thinking, oh, he could have just went snap and he's poof and he's gone is the way to handle it, but obviously God knows best and he knows he gave him an adequate punishment.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of like almost like to kind of loop it back to fatherhood, right? It's like the first time your kid gets in trouble, you know, maybe you're like, hey, don't do that. The second time, the punishment presumably is going to be a little bit more harsh than the first time, right? So it's almost
Mhm.
like the first time he's extremely disappointed, but apart from like as far as the punishments go, right? Like well, your labor is going to be a little bit, you're going to have to work harder to get crops. You're going to have to, obviously you're not part of the Garden of Eden anymore. Um, but for the
Right.
most part, the punishments weren't too crazy. You know what I mean? Like they seem pretty level-headed, I would say, right? Because it's almost like silly, and you if you take yourself out of it and you look at it, it's definitely a just punishment because it's like you're in the Garden of Eden, you're in literal paradise. You have every fruit, everything that you could ever want at your disposal. You're in paradise. You're just vibing, living a good life. God's walking
Yeah.
around all the time, so you have a personal relationship with him.
that'd be crazy.
And yeah, and you get tempted for one tree. It's like he's like, you can do whatever you want, just don't eat from these. You know what I mean? So it's like, homie, I gave you one rule, one.
I think that's exactly what. Yeah,
You know,
just one.
it's like I only asked you one thing, and you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
please leave me. And then Cain comes around, and it's like, I assume he's not the only one that's sinning up to that point, right? So there's probably other sinning going on, but that's particularly egregious too, right? Um, Fanticide, I think is what it's called, if I remember correctly, is killing of one's family. Um, Fanticide, it's like killing somebody is always despicable, but killing your own family member is like particularly despicable, right? So it's like God is almost like, and when I read it, it almost feels like he's like taken aback, almost. You know, he's like, I
Well,
can
I
hear
think
your brother's blood crying out to me. You know,
yeah,
so
that'd be crazy. Just walking around, just screaming.
yeah, so yeah,
No.
I definitely think all of it is. I mean, it's just. Maybe it's harsh, but it's just.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just I don't think I have any issue with any of the punishments. I mean, it sure sucks that we have to suffer for the things that our fathers have done, but
Yeah,
and then our children would have to suffer for the things that we have done. But I
right,
mean, such is the nature that sin is.
right. Yeah.
I think
So
something that's really cool, even in the midst of that punishment, though, um, because it says that Adam and Eve created uh, clothes for themselves. They were
mm,
out of leaves, right, or something like that.
the
I
fig
can't
the
remember.
fig tr- the
Fig
fig
Yeah, the
trees.
leaves.
fig,
Yeah.
the fig leaves together, right, and made loin coverings. But it's interesting in chapter 3, verse 20 and 21, or just really 21. It says, Adonai made Adam and his wife tunics of skin, and he clothed them. So
Right.
even in the midst of being punished, he was still a father, and he
Yeah.
still took he still cared for his kids obviously greatly, even though they were in trouble. And
Oh yeah.
uh,
Eh,
I think that even though you just got in trouble, you got disciplined. Your parents are still going to feed you dinner, right?
yeah.
I mean, they should. They oughta at least.
Well, I
But
think my bad.
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. That's it.
Oh, well, I was gonna say I think like even that all was the start of God trying to save them because it says right there right before he closed them that he has to kick them out otherwise they'll eat of the fruit of the tree and they'll live forever. And so
Right.
piecing some of the things together, that now they have sin, but if they were to live together forever, they would live forever always having sin,
Well, and they
always
would
being
be, you know, for lack of a better term, they would be God at that point, right? Like they would have the
I
Yeah,
think
because it
capability
yeah,
says
of
that.
touching.
he would be like us. Yeah, let me see
Yeah,
if I
yeah.
can.
It
They
says in
would have
verse 22.
immortality, and they would
Since,
have he
yeah,
would have the
since
access to
man
infinite
since
knowledge.
man has become like us, because it seems like God doesn't equate being a God is not having power, but is knowing the difference. Because this is the second time it says become like us, knowing good and evil.
Right.
He must not reach out of he must not reach out and take from the tree of life, eat and leave forever. I think God's like the way I believe I heard it was that he didn't want us living forever being broken now that we've broken ourselves. So this is now the very start of God going to fix us before we live forever with him.
Right.
That is through Jesus Christ. So I mean, I feel like how do I put this in words?
Well, I think it.
It's
No, you go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying that I think it's exactly what you nailed on the head. That even though we're being punished, he's still being a father, and now, because as a father, even though we punish our children, or I'm not a father, but how my father treated me is even though I've been punished, he's still looking for a way for me to then learn and become better from my own mistake. Such then is God to hear it,
Mhm.
right? As he said, kicks him out. He's like, okay,
Right.
he already knows what has to happen in order for them to come back to him.
Mm.
Yeah.
Dang. I mean, that's very deep, right? There's a lot of depth to that, and I mean, I can't disagree um, at all. And I'm going to ponder on that one. But I think you're right. I think it has to be along the lines that, you know, because it says here in my version, it says 22, then Adonai said, Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. So now, in case he stretches out his hand and takes also from the tree of life and eats and lives forever. So Adonai sent him away from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he had been taken.
Yeah, I don't think I don't. In which I mean, he probably did us a favor. I mean, I don't know about you,
That's what I
but
was about to say, yeah.
I would not want to live forever just being broken. I mean,
Right.
I just get
Well,
I would, yeah.
there's also the idea like the humans were never meant, right? Because it mentions somewhere in here um, where I believe it was in the deception, right? But also in verse 25 of chapter 2, right before kind of the fall started, it says, Now both of them were naked, the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was so interesting how even when they ate of the fruit, they immediately felt naked, right? Like they immediately felt ashamed. And it mentions somewhere down where um, God asked them, like, who told you you were naked, right?
Yeah, that would be verse 11 of chapter 3.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah,
told
and then it
you that
said,
you are naked? Have you eaten from the tree from which I've commanded you not to eat?
so we were never intended to feel obviously ashamed or unless we did something obviously wrong. But I don't think humans were ever, like you said, Stampy. I don't think we were ever intended to know evil. I don't think that God never wanted that. I think he's when it says in the earlier chapters, when he was creating the earth, he looked at it and saw that it was good, only good. It didn't say, God looked at it and saw that it was kind of good, a little bit of bad. You know what I mean? Like it was good. And when he looked at all of his creation as a whole, including the
All of it
humans,
was very good.
very good, right? And so I don't think those words like tread lightly. You know what I mean? I think they're very
I think
commanding words,
what God calls good must be good.
right? Yeah.
Or at least I think so, because I mean, I don't know about you, but
Well,
that's God right there.
my point is I definitely agree with you. I don't think that he wanted us to live forever knowing evil. That evil exists, or also feeling ashamed.
Oh,
You know what I
definitely.
mean? And it seemed to me at this point, God didn't. God's method did not seem to be destroying anything, right? Like it. Um, I don't know what's going on in heaven right now, but it seemed to me like at least on his earth, murder was not an option, is what it seemed like, you know.
Yeah,
And
I don't think God ever intended us to be taking the lives of each other.
right, and
Not in the
also it's
beginning, at
with
least.
him as well. I don't think his plan was ever to just, oh hey, this went bad, let me just restart real quick,
No,
and
yeah, and
you know
that's
what I
one
mean.
thing we're very lucky because we messed up. I mean, no matter what you think about what anything's been having on, the some truths are is we messed up, and God's like, you know what? Let's go on with it instead of just like if some people who do painting, some people who create things for a living, they see a mistake and they throw it away, they trash it, they burn it, and instead God's like, okay, let's try to fix it. And I
Right.
think that speaks volumes onto the love and mercy on what our Creator is.
And it's even in society, like there's if you ask, there was an interview with a very old couple that's been like married like 77 years or something like that. And I mean it was crazy. They've been married a long time, and they asked them like what's the kind of the key, and they said, well, we were raised in a time when something broke, you fixed it, you didn't throw it away. And yeah, I think that is probably a God-given trait. I know that it's kind of diminished over the years, right? Where it's like, oh, this broke, oh, whatever, just throw it away. I don't want to even care to fix it. I don't want to spend my time, yada yada yada. But I think there's a little bit of I don't know. I'm agreeing with you. Just trying to put some examples out there,
No, they're
but I
definitely
think that's important in life, like to have that mentality, right? If something breaks, try to like fix it. Don't just throw it away, especially when it comes to something that's important to you. You know.
definitely, and I think that also plays in volume in some of the ways we may have materialistic views in the world, and like when we get later on down, we'll see like where Jesus talks about the rich man parable and how it's harder for a rich man to enter heaven than it is for a poor man because of
Right.
his possessions, and it goes right along with the whole fixing things rather than throwing them away and or replacing them, because I mean if you're a millionaire or you're rich in any way materialistically, it is easy for you to replace anything that's small, right?
Right.
Or even
Right.
things that are big because you have all the things. But for those that don't may not have, like oh I'm just a farmer with a grain mill and this is my only grain mill and I got one goat. My grain mill broke. I don't have the money to buy a new one, so I need to fix this one. I think that you know correlates. Yeah, that's
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, and Matt too. I do really like your perspective on it. I mean, I think that it's when you get down to the brass taxes of it, right? I think the one of the I think there's multiple things that are important when reading scripture. One is to understand the facts of what's going on, right? And understand maybe some of the principles of the story. And I think that it's also important whenever anyone's reading any scripture, if you can take something good from a scripture and possibly turn it into a lesson that God might be trying to teach you personally, I think that that is also very good. And I'm glad that you mentioned your perspective too, because it kind of puts some groundworks in my head, especially going forward.
oh most yeah. I mean the thing is, and what's crazy about having different perspectives is like the funny thing is like, or at least the way I view things is like when it comes to God, just because we may have two different perspectives, it may seem conflicting between you and me, and in reality, it's not. We just don't have the understanding to correlate the two. So,
Mm, mm,
two different perspectives doesn't necessarily disprove one another at all. I mean,
Right.
it might just be difficult for me to understand what you think and you for understand me in
yes.
such a way, because our
And
brains work differently.
I agree with that. I think that with in the case of like Matt sharing a separate perspective than me. I don't even feel like it's up for debate. I feel like I'm it's more of like a privilege. I think if in the announcements when me and Matt wrote a letter for this Bible study, that was kind of part of the whole idea, right? Was to be able to learn more about each other's perspectives, and I think within that, like as I was saying before, like it kind of helps me also, like even Matt's perspective being different, because when it comes to studying the Bible, man, I love having an open mind. You know what I mean? And I really like looking at a scripture and not understanding it, and it forces me to maybe think of it a different way. And when I hear y'all's perspective on things, I think it's super beneficial for me because um, I don't think it's a good idea to go into reading the Bible with selfish pride or having an egotistical mindset to think that, oh well, as soon as I read it, it's going to make sense the way I see it, and that's just the truth. Because I think anybody can read a scripture and read it a different way, and if you benefit from it, I think it's a good thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Sorry, it got cold in my room. I got to get a blanket.
Dude, you sound cold, dude. You sound like you had the shivers. um,
Where'd that so?
Matt, was there anything else that you wanted to add? I had a question after, but I didn't want to. If there's anything
Um,
else within these
not really.
chapters.
I could think. I think I touched on everything that I wanted to mention.
hmm I mean, Stampy, was there anything else you wanted to add within these
Um,
chapters?
within the last 5. Well, these guys just live for a long time, man.
Dude, also, I'm wondering this because in chapter 3, verse 14, when the Lord
Chapter 3, verse
said to
14.
when he said to the serpent, "Because you did this, cursed you
Oh,
are above all
yes.
the livestock and above every animal of the field. On your belly you will go, and dust you will eat all the days of your life." I wonder what he was referring to because, like,
It's funny you say that. Yes, it sparked it up in my head. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
like, so it's just kind of interesting. And it says, "I will put animosity between you and the woman, because your seed and her seed, he will crush your head, and you will crush his head." Now, I'm not the smartest, guy in the world. But when I first read this, I'm like, wait, is that why women hate snakes? Is that why? Is that why they hate the snakes? They're always trying to step on
I mean,
them.
snakes are they are our mortal enemies, right? There's even for those who
Like snakes?
stick with the science side of it, right? There's
Right.
there's a lot of different studies that have shown that not only snakes are our mortal enemies because of the way that we lived, right? So even if you want to take like an evolutionary perspective, then
Yeah.
uh, snakes were our biggest enemy, even in that perspective, because we resided in the same places that they resided, right? So they say that we lived in trees. Well, snakes live in trees as well. So
Oh yeah.
they were our enemies there as well.
Mm.
But
It's
our brains are especially uh, like it's natural for us to see snakes and shapes and things where there are not shapes, right? Because it's easier and better and more advantageous for our brain to see something that's not there, um, rather than not see something that is there, right? So if there's a threat, that's why, like, if you've ever, like, it's
clothes on
really
your
easy
chair in
for
the
us
middle
to
of the
see
night.
faces where there aren't faces, or
Oh
There's
yeah,
clothes
yeah,
on your chair in the middle of the night.
right, yeah.
yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
we've all
dude.
done
It's
that
for
shit,
your
bro.
yeah. There's a reason for that, right? It's a
Yeah,
survival
yeah.
mechanism. So
hmm
I
No, I
think
got you on that.
I think given the verse 14, somebody a long time ago made a correlation between that and Jesus. Cuz cuz I mean, at first I thought, God was talking about mankind as a whole. But when you read, and I'm reading two different, because I'm reading King James, I got the CSB, and I have the Tree of Life right here. And they all use him and he and his, which are personal words for an individual.
right,
And so it seems, and it's because that's why I was like, ecstatic because what you said brought up the correlation that somebody told me about how this is one of the first foretellings of some sort. Because in Revelation, it also makes an annotation back to this about Satan having to be on his belly and then being crushed by um, the woman's seed and by his heel. And so, yeah, I don't know if that like I'd have to go look and find it, but I
Well,
just you said it and it just like pooped in my head, and I was like, oh,
yes, and in Romans 16:20, right? It says that and this is talking about I believe welcoming the apostles. I can't remember, but it says
20.
yep. Romans 16:20 it says, "Now the God of Shalom will soon crush Satan under your feet. May the grace of your Lord Yeshua be with you." Um, well, for some reason, I'm feeling like there's because I've heard that correlation too, like the he will crush your head and you will crush his heel, right? And I think there's other scriptures that have the correlation when Jesus even says that. Um, and I have to find it. Let's see, 20. I have the World Wide Web right here. I might actually just look this up real quick, see if I can find it.
The World Wide Web. While you're looking for that, just gonna say, I think throughout the book, since we're talking about it,
Hmm.
I think Genesis is like my third or fourth favorite book. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to read more about it.
Yeah.
It's interesting how
I
just
don't
like
know
even
what place it would be in for me, to be honest.
What'd
Definitely
you
up
say?
there, but I'm not sure what place it would fall for me, but it's definitely up there.
Well, I'm pretty sure my favorite is also my most scared, like the one I'm scared the most of, and that's Revelation.
mm,
My favorite's definitely Job.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me last night when
Yeah,
we were talking about Job. Job, I would say now that you bring back that up to fore memory, I think I want to say Job's going to be my second,
yeah,
and I think it's because I feel like most people can relate to Job,
yeah.
or at least I think I can.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I said last night, I think Job is a much sadder version of our everyday lives, right? Like obviously his his was a little bit more extreme, I hope, than everybody else's, but you know that battle that he faced, that's something that we deal with every single day, just on a smaller
Oh
scale.
yeah, definitely smaller. Don't my life no been no piece cake, but I'd rather not do what Job had to do.
Oh yeah.
mm.
Job.
So what it seems like is it says in the broadest sense the church as a whole is Eve's seed, right?
Makes sense.
Standing in missionary opposition to the serpent's seed or demonic confers, which makes sense because and what it says in verse 15. Um,
I put hostility between you and the woman, or let me read the tree of life. Actually, hold on. 15. I put animosity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. I will crush your head, and you will crush his heel. Verse 15.
see what this says over
That also
here.
makes sense, I guess, too, because he tricked Eve. So, and then in verse 16, he immediately goes to the woman, which we would assume he's speaking to Eve. So, the seed of Eve which would also be the church, Jesus, and everyone, actually,
Mhm.
all of life.
Right.
And then the principalities of Lucifer, of Satan, or the serpent. So
Yeah, no, this
it's
says
crazy how many
in
correlations you can put there.
yeah, it's weird how it describes it in Hebrews 2 verse 14. I'll just read it. It says, therefore, since the children share in flesh and blood, he himself, I believe it's referring to Jesus, likewise shared the same humanity, so that through death he might break the power of the one who had the power of death, that is, the devil.
Ooh, wait, hold on. Say it. Okay, what? Where did you read that from?
Hebrews 2 verses 14.
Hebrews 2,
Verse 14.
Now since the children have flesh and blood in common, Jesus also shared in this, so that through his death he might destroy the one who holds power. Again, I would trust him. Oh, let me read some of the things. Bring him in. He about it. Yeah, it definitely makes that connection between
Right?
the children and Jesus. And free those held in slavery all their lives by the fear of death. For it is clear that he does not reach out to help angels, but to help Abraham's offspring. Therefore, he had brothers and sisters in every way, so that he can become a merciful and faithful high priest in matters pertaining to God, to make atonement for the sins of the people. For since he himself has suffered when he was tempted, he was able to help those who are tempted. Yeah, that definitely makes sense, especially since Jesus is here in man form, so he is
Right.
then like us. Yeah, flesh now since the children have flesh and blood in common. That is,
Well, shoot,
that's
fire
very
me.
interesting how
Yeah.
different points in
Mm,
the Bible.
and I like making the connections, man, and understanding it maybe further. But either way, I think that's kind of what it means. When was jokingly saying like I will put animosity between you and the woman. It's obviously not talking about women aren't gonna like snakes. It's talking about
Oh yeah,
um,
no, yeah.
it's referring to the devil in that sense. Um, and yeah, he I believe is talking about Jesus. Um, I'm gonna do some more read. I'm gonna do some personal study on that because
Reminds me. Let me grab the Hebrew text of it. I have that option, right? Yeah, Hebrew. Oh, I have to go to the NIV to get the Hebrew. Okay, let me try that. Genesis 3. Genesis 3. NIV.
yeah.
I will say I think it's interesting that I think a man got the brunt of the punishment there.
Man as an Adam man
Yeah,
or man?
Adam and every man subsequently from that point on, right?
Yeah, and I
Got the
think
brunt of
that
it.
goes along with the teaching how we're supposed to be leaders
Yeah,
of
we're
our
supposed to be the head of
household.
the
So
household that falls at our feet.
yeah, so even though
Or
he
it
was
falls at our feet.
deceived, it was his job to guard against it.
Yep.
Because
Exactly what
because
it's
we
for,
have to keep in mind, like, even though it's a short story, we have no idea how long or what else God taught like Adam and Eve before all this happened,
right.
between the creation and the fall. And so this could have been well. Here, actually, let me probably piece it together real quick. Go to the genealogies. Adam. So Adam lived for 130 years. Then he followed Seth. So God, and so Seth is made, and so within 130 years is the creation of man, then to the fall of man, the death of Abel, the birth of Seth.
Right.
So anywhere, I mean, it could have been literally 120 years before the fall of mankind. Well, I guess what Seth lives for 105 years. So I mean, yeah, it could have like 80 years could have passed before it, Adam was banished out. So I mean, God could have been teaching him all these things that were right, and so it would make sense that he we bear a, a heavier punishment for the failure for our failure. Because I mean, in theory, if we as the men could have been better, like because I don't like better in our position, we could have maybe prevented. Maybe we could have saved our wife Eve, or we could have prevented ourselves from falling, and thus like maybe some way also saving her in the process. I don't know.
Right.
Well,
I think
also
there's
too,
always
like when
punishment there, right? Because like the way that I look at it, right, is if you're a leader, if one of your, for lack of a better term, right, one of your subordinates fail, it's always
Your failure
it's
too.
always your failure, right? It's never their fault because it's always, well, you should have made sure that that they understood the mission, right? That there was no questions, that there was no possibility for a misunderstanding, right? It's
Mhm.
your responsibility to make sure that everybody is maintaining, understanding, and you know working
well,
towards the
even
same
in
goal. So,
in chapter 3 verses I think it's 9. Yeah. Then it says, then Adonai called to the man, and he said to him, "Where are you?" And obviously he was. I assume he was approaching Adam because of, um,
Knew what happened.
yeah, what happened.
well, yeah, because
Because
I don't remember if it's in this version or what exactly. If you have it open, you might be able to see it. But from my understanding, there was a version that I read where it talked about, like God's walking around and he's like, what in the world's going on? Like it's weird that I'm not able to see them. Like it's weird that
Yeah,
they're hiding.
why they
Right?
were
It
hiding
caused
from me.
suspicion and concern, right? So, like he knew, which is why he
right,
called. Like he knew something was up. So, and obviously it's God, right? So I would say that he
right,
knew before it ever even happened that it was going to happen. But you know, still.
Let me be in this room.
by the way. Okay, going.
What's up? You broke up a
No,
little bit.
a little bit, but yeah.
No, that what saying
You're breaking
it's
up
the man.
for me. I don't know for everybody else,
There's
but
big one, and it says it in break for everyone.
He's breaking from.
Is that just
I don't keep hearing it very well.
God? Yeah.
Back here, stand up,
what?
back.
Up,
Can't
man.
hear us.
You're breaking up bad.
Because it might not be necessarily. Yes. I heard Matt saying about he was where is
Right.
hiding from me.
Yeah, and I do think it's interesting how like the Lord obviously went to the man first, right? Because he was in charge of, I believe, his union with his wife, his marriage. Like that he's the head of the house, so to speak, right? So,
Head of the house and head of Eden. Like even before she was placed there, I
right,
believe he appointed him to be in charge of Eden.
No, he did for sure. No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
he's the one that named all the animals.
He said all of these things. Yeah,
That's why a platypus is so weird. Not just playing.
yeah, right. uh, no, it goes on to say about that. That all of these things was. I mean, Adam was over everything, everything that was good, everything that God created on earth for them. Um, I was to say, yeah, and it says in 17, just kind of go along with, just kind of running with your point, Matt. Just and verse 17 of chapter 3, it says, "Because you listened to your wife's voice and ate of the tree which I commanded you, saying, you must not eat." Then he goes into his punishment. But I do think it's very important just to note as men, and leaders, just whatever you do, always be a leader, right? Um, in any regard of life that we're in, kind of like you mentioned, Matt, and like even a supervisor position, you kind of hold that responsibility, and as with a woman or anything, kids, family, um, I noticed how they kind of were pointing the blames. It seemed like, right? As soon
Yeah.
as God asked Adam what had happened, he said, "Oh, this woman you gave me." He
Right.
said, and the man said, "The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me this tree. She gave me of the tree, and I ate." And then when Adonai asked the woman Eve, she's like, "Oh, well, the serpent deceived me, and I ate it." They're all kind of placing the blame, but I, I, I really wonder how maybe what would have happened if they would have said, they would just fell on their knees in forgiveness and not been afraid. And I think that's really important to learn from that. We have to kind of take your licks, right? When you do mess up and you do make mistakes, we shouldn't run from them.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I agree.
Oh my. Oh yeah. I don't think it's crazy. I wish there's so much to
I think you can
speculate, I
dissect.
guess you could
Yeah, you
say.
can dissect a lot. You can dissect a lot of the different scriptures, and um,
It's it's crazy because I feel like I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he said some things to try to. Like, obviously, he did, because like when he goes says, "For God knows when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, you will be like God, knowing God is evil." Tempting as if he's saying like God doesn't want you to be better, like to be better than what you are now. So it wouldn't surprise me in some of his silver tongue speaking that that he planted a seed of fear in them for after they already messed up and they ate and cause them to try to place shift blame. I mean, like it even happens. Like I know for like as an older brother and stuff. Like I'll be playing with my siblings, they might convince me to do something, and I'm like, nah, CJ, he, bro, we were talking. CJ was like, this is what we should do. Like I'm not the one to get in trouble now because my brother
right,
talks me into this and stuff.
right, yeah. No, I think also too. I think it's Albert Einstein, I believe, has a quote. I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's he basically says something along the lines that if you judge a fish on its ability to
Climb a tree.
climb a
Climb
tree,
a
it'll
tree.
go its whole life believing it's stupid, right?
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that this is the shame that they felt, just trying to maybe understand where they were at, why they did run, is just the shame that they felt they were never even intended to feel. Like this
No.
evil that they learned, this new perspective, I don't think they, as humans, it's like, they weren't supposed to feel that, and so they probably were very afraid even of the feelings that they felt, and I mean, shoot, I think I would be. I think of it like taking a drug that you shouldn't take, and your body feels this crazy feeling. You start freaking out, and you get all scared, and you think you run to your mom and tell her to call the ambulance. You know what I mean? Like, like that.
I've not had that
That
experience,
I don't
but
know. I'm just saying. That's just an example.
I
We can
definitely
understand
agree.
it. Yeah.
I definitely agree
Doesn't
with
have
that
to
right
be
there.
personal. Doesn't have to be personal. I'm just saying we can understand the example. A little bit.
Just a teensy weeny.
Yeah. Right.
Um, but no, I don't think I have much else to say. I think even though it's just 5 chapters, there's so much. and I think we'll find this to be the norm when it comes to reading this book.
Mm.
Not Genesis, but the book as a whole. Is you'll only read 5, 6 chapters, and there's just so much, for the most part, except for genealogies. But even then, there's so much knowledge and history thrown back that
I mean, look at us, dude. We started talking about genealogies for like 20 minutes. Like we were, you
oh
know what I mean?
yeah,
Like we'll dissect it. This group, yeah, we'll get
it's
into it, man.
it's thrown back, and I think it goes to the what am I looking for? I guess how much information it's filled within the pages on what we're reading. That
Right.
I think like it's another example of why we should study it. Even like, and I'm just reminding for me at least, because I'm got to work on it myself, on studying it, because it's not. It seems like it's not something, because I've read Genesis a handful of times, I would think, and I don't think I've ever came to conclusions or thought processes that me, and uh, name blanks. I'm having name blanks, but I don't think I've
Matt or
came to
Mac, either one.
I don't think I've came to conclusions that any three of us have came to today before
Right.
today.
No, for sure.
So I
Well,
think
I
it
think
just shoots the yeah.
it's a commandment, right? To read every day in undertone. To read in undertone daily is what it says, and to oh man, what's the word? You blank on the scriptures. You have to not harp on the scriptures. It's you have to reflect. Basically, is what it's saying, but it's not just our commandment's not just to read it and say, "Oh yeah, that was cool," but I think that it was Apostle Paul um, to use discernment in
Yeah,
the
I think that's the
scriptures
word.
as well, right?
Discern.
Yeah, and to read every day and to discern the scriptures, and I think that that's why having a group like this where we can sit down and read it and hear each other's perspectives, and like you said, I learn new perspectives, hearing you guys talk, and I love that. It expands the mind and it feels good, and I think that's kind of part of the Holy Spirit maybe working. But either way, I agree with you, man, and I'm looking forward to. I was gonna ask. I mean, how do we feel about
Continuing.
we can continue if
Sounds good to
everyone
me.
wants to read some more. I'm down to read some more. I mean, we can shoot for. I mean, I know Matt has a task list for us, or a Bible series task list already written
Yeah,
up.
it's on the announcements page.
Yeah, I don't know if I mean we can shoot to read to 10, or I don't know if you guys have time just to read a few more and talk about those as well.
I got time to read more. I don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that.
Actually, I love it. I think reading with people and then talking about what we read helps um raise a desire, because at least for me personally, reading by myself a struggle and requires more focus than any normal other task, because for me reading is booty. And so it,
Yeah,
when it comes but the Bible's a glorious book, and I've read through chapters, and I think I burn myself out sometimes, because then I get to the point where, like, all right, I've read so much that I kind of want to throw my face in a wall right now, so I'm not going
right,
to do
right,
it, and then I end up never coming back again, and I restart.
right. Well, I mean, if we wanted to try to get to 10, I agree with you. If we wanted to get to 10, I mean, it's only a couple pages
I'm down.
to get to 10.
I mean, I
Uh,
usually
I'm down.
read 10 chapters when I read per day, so.
Beautiful. Garrett, would you like to join in the reading, or would you rather just listen?
I'm probably just gonna listen.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
copy that, copy that.
So we
I
Um,
think
are
it's
going
my
to
turn,
be,
right? Technically.
if you
yeah,
want to,
I have to find
chapter
a
6,
yeah.
I
comfortable
think.
position to read. I was struggling so far last time because I was like having to like hunch over and I was losing my place.
Oh no, yeah. I gotta hold that. I gotta hold the book up if I even want to try to read well.
Yeah, well, my ADHD makes it like I'll like so like the way that my brain reads, right, is I'll be like, so for chapter 6 I'll be like, when mankind began to multiply on, and then like my ADHD would be like, you know,
Right.
when mankind began to multiply on, and I'll read the same ending of the same sentence.
Yeah.
Right? So, but yeah,
Right. Right.
I use my finger a lot when I read. But all right,
Me
so
too,
it's
bro.
chapter
It's okay.
6. Sons of God, daughters of mankind is the chapter heading. So it says, when mankind began to multiply on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of mankind were beautiful, and they took any they chose as wives for themselves. And the Lord said, My spirit will not remain with mankind forever, because they are corrupt. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth, both in those days and afterward, when the sons of God came to the daughters of mankind. There it is, I lost my spot, sorry. Who bore children to them. They were the powerful men of old, the famous men. When the Lord saw that human wickedness was widespread on earth, and that every inclination of the human mind was nothing but evil all the time, the Lord regretted that he made man on earth, and he was deeply grieved. Then the Lord said, I will wipe mankind, whom I created, off the face of the earth, together with the animals, creatures that crawl, and birds of the sky. I regret that I made them. Noah, however, found favor with the Lord. So God warns Noah. These are the family records of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among his contemporaries. Noah walked with God, and Noah fathered 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with wickedness. God saw how corrupt the earth was, for every creature had corrupted its way on earth. Then God said to Noah, I have decided to put an end to every creature, for the earth is filled with wickedness because of them. Therefore I am going to destroy them along with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it with pitch, inside and outside. This is how you are to make it. The ark will be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. You are to make a roof, finishing the sides of the ark to within 18 inches of the roof. You are to put a door in the side of the ark. Make it with lower, middle, and upper decks. Understand that I am bringing a flood waters on the earth to destroy every creature under heaven with the breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark with your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives. You are also to bring into the ark 2 of all the living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of everything, from the birds according to their kinds, from the livestock according to their kinds, and from the animals that crawl on the ground according to their kinds, will come to you so that you can keep them alive. Take with you every kind of food that is eaten. Gather it as food for you and for them. And Noah did this. He did everything that God had commanded him.
All right. That must have been a crazy thing to watch. All the animals in a single file line. Right. Right.
Get on the boat. Get on the boat.
All little grasshoppers and everything. Just... All right. Chapter 7, Deliverance through the Flood. Then Adonai said to Noah, Come, you and all your household into the ark. For you only do I perceive as righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean animal you shall take with you 7 of each kind, male and female, and of the animals which themselves are not clean, 2, male and female. Also of the flying creatures of the sky, 7 of every kind, male and female, to keep offspring alive on the face of the whole land. For in 7 more days I am going to make it rain upon the land 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe out all existence that I made from the face of the ground. So Noah did all just as Adonai commanded him. Now Noah was 600 years old when the flood came, water upon the land. So Noah, his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives entered the ark because of the flood waters. Of the clean animals and unclean animals, the flying creatures, and everything that crawls on the ground. Two by two they came to Noah into the ark, male and female. Just as God commanded Noah. After the 7 days, the flood waters were upon the land. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on this day, all the water sources of the great deep burst open, and the windows of the sky were opened. Then there was rain upon the land 40 days and 40 nights. On that same day, Noah, along with Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of Noah's sons with them, entered the ark. They and every animal according to its kind, and all the livestock according to its kind, and every crawling creature that crawls on the land according to its kind, and every flying creature according to its kind, every bird, every winged creature. So to Noah and into the ark they went by twos, all flesh in which was the spirit of life. Those that came male and female of all flesh came just as God commanded him. Then Adonai shut him in. The flood was 40 days upon the land, and the waters increased and lifted the ark so that it rose above the land. The waters overpowered and became very mighty over the land, and the ark drifted on the surface of the water. The waters completely overpowered the land so that all the high mountains beneath the entire sky were covered. The waters rose 15 cubits higher as the mountains were covered. All flesh perished, those that crawl on the land, the flying creatures, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm upon the land, and all the humankind. Everything that had the breath of the spirit of life in its nostrils. Everything on dry land died. So he wiped out all existence that was upon the surface of the ground, everything from people to livestock to crawling creatures, to flying creatures of the sky. They were wiped out off the land. Only Noah and those with him in the ark survived. The waters overpowered the land for 150 days.
Oh my. A long time.
Amen.
Chapter 8. Then God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. So God caused a wind to pass over the land, and the waters subsided. Also, the sources of the deep and the windows of the sky were closed up, and the rain from the sky was held back. The waters kept receding gradually from upon the land, and the waters decreased by the end of 150 days. The ark came to rest in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, and upon the mountains of Ararat. The waters went on decreasing into the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains appeared. It was the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made. Then he sent out a raven and kept it going back and forth until the waters were drying up from the land. Then he sent out a dove to see whether the waters had receded from the surface of the ground. But the dove did not find a resting place for the sole of her foot. She returned to him in the ark because water covered the surface of the whole land. He stretched out his hand and took her, and brought her back into the ark. So he waited yet another 7 days, and again he sent out the dove from the ark. The dove came to him at evening, and surprisingly, a fresh plucked olive leaf was in its mouth. So Noah knew that the waters had receded from the land. After he had waited 7 more days, he sent out the dove, but she did not return to him again. It was in his 601st year, in the first month, on the first day of the month, that the waters had dried up from the land. Then Noah removed the cover of the ark, and he looked, and behold, the surface of the ground had dried up. By the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the land was dry. Then God spoke to Noah, saying, Come out of the ark, you and your wife, and your sons' wives, with you. Every animal that is with you of all flesh, including the flying creatures, livestock, and every crawling creature that crawls on the land, bring out with you, and let them swarm in the land and be fruitful and multiply upon the land. So Noah came out with his sons, his wife, his sons' wives, every animal, every crawling creature, every flying creature, everything that crawls upon the land came out from the ark in their families. Then Noah built an altar to Adonai, and he took of every clean domestic animal and of every clean flying creature, and he offered burnt offerings on the altar. When Adonai smelled the soothing aroma, Adonai said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground on account of man, even though the inclination of the heart of humankind is evil from youth. Nor will I ever again smite all living creatures as I have done. While all the days of the land remain, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will not cease.
Chapter 9. God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear and terror of you will be in every living creature on the earth, every bird of the sky, every creature that crawls on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. They are placed under your authority. Every creature that lives and moves will be food for you. As I gave the green plants, I have given you everything. However, you must not eat meat with its lifeblood in it, and I will require a penalty for your lifeblood. I will require it from any animal and from any human if someone murders a fellow human. I will require that person's life. Whoever sheds human blood by humans, his blood will be shed. And for God made humans in his image. But you be fruitful and multiply, spread out over the earth and multiply on it. Then God said to Noah and his sons with him, Understand that I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, birds, livestock, and all the wildlife of the earth that are with you, all the animals of the earth that came out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you, that never again will every creature be wiped out by floodwaters. There will never again be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all future generations. I have placed my bow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I form clouds over the earth and the bow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all the living creatures. Water will never again become a flood to destroy every creature. The bow will be in the clouds, and I will look at it and remember the permanent covenant between God and all the living creatures on earth. God said to Noah, This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and every creature on earth. Noah's sons, who came out of the ark, were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were Noah's sons. And from them the whole earth was populated. Noah, as a man of the soil, began by planting a vineyard. He drank some of the wine, became drunk, and uncovered himself inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a cloak and placed it over both their shoulders, and walking backward, they covered their father's nakedness. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father naked. When Noah awoke from his drinking and learned what his youngest son had done to him, he said, Canaan is cursed. He will be the lowest of slaves to his brothers. He also said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. Let Canaan be Shem's slave. Let God extend Japheth. Let Japheth dwell in the tents of Shem. Let Canaan be Shem's slave. Now Noah lived 350 years after the flood. So Noah's life lasted 950 years. Then he died.
That's going to be interesting to talk about. 10. I just kind of looked over this. You guys gotta bear with me, all right? This chapter is, you're gonna bear with me, okay? And these are the genealogical records of Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. Japheth's sons were Gomer, Magog, Madah, Madah, I guess, Javan, Jubel, Tubal, and Mishke, and Tyrus. Gomer's sons were Ashkenaz, Rupath, and Togarmah. Javan's sons were Elisha, I'm assuming, and Tarshish, Kitties, and Donates. From these, the coastlands of the nation spread out in their lands, each one according to his language, according to their families and to their nations. Ham's sons were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Cush's sons were Zebeb, Havilah, Zapta, Rama, and Zabteka. And Rama's sons were Sheba and Dedan. Now Cush fathered Nimrod. He started to become mighty in the land. He was a mighty hunter before Adonai. This is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before Adonai. The beginning of his kingdom included Babel, Erect, Akkad, and Calneh, and the land of Shinar. From that land he went out to Assyria and built Nineveh, Rekovakar, Kala, and Rezin, between Nineveh and Kala. It is the great city. Mizraim fathered the Ludites, the Anamites, and the Lehabites, the Naphthites, and the Pathrudites, the Cashluites, from whom came the Philistines, and the Caphtorites. Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn, Heath, the Jebusite, the Amorite, and I'm sorry, not and the Amorite, the Girgashite, the Havite, the Arkite, the Sinite, the Arvidite, the Zemarite, and the Hamathite. And afterwards, the Canaanite families were scattered. Now the Canaanite border was from Zidon, as you go towards Gura, as far as Gaza. You go toward Sodom and Gomorrah. I know that one. Admah and Zebium, as far as Lasha. These are Ham's sons according to their families, according to their languages, in their lands, in their nations. Sons were also born to Shem, who was Japheth's older brother, and the father of all the sons of Eber. Shem's sons were Elam, Asher, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. Aram's sons were Uz, Hol, Gether, and Mash. Arpachshad fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. 2 sons were born to Eber. The name of the first was Peleg, because in his days the land was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Joktan fathered Elmodad, Shelif, Hazarmalveth, Jerah, Hadaram, Uzel, Dikla, Obal, Ibamel, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All of these are Joktan's sons. Their dwelling place was from Misha to you come towards Sephar, the eastern hill country. These are Shem's sons according to their families, according to their languages, and the lands according to their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noah according to their genealogies in their nations, and from these the nations were dispersed on the earth after the flood.
We thought
My,
reading the genealogy of Adam was bad.
all right, dude, holy moly. I'm sorry, guys. I butchered 98% of those names, but
It's okay. It's
No,
we
okay.
got
yeah,
through it.
I feel like they just got names by throwing in random letter generators or something back then sometimes.
Dude, and also like the accent too. They have an accent to these names that
Right.
probably make them sound a little bit more, flowy. But
Right.
I do not have that accent, so
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Even listening to like audiobooks, you probably tell they're like, "Ah!"
Oh, dude, I remember when I would give Bible when we would do Bible readings in church. I would get up on the stage and do Bible readings.
Mhm.
I would 100% go to like a Bible audiobook, and I would listen over and over and over until I could get some of the names.
Yeah.
And it takes some practice, I'll tell you that. Not necessarily
Practice.
easy.
All right. So where do we start back from the chapter 6 to talk?
Yeah, I mean the whole thing. Let's bring it all through it, right? Like,
I'm gonna move back to
Anything that anybody wants to talk about it.
like enter. Let me
Matt,
see.
do
There was a
you?
couple things.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I gotta find them. So let Matt go.
Oh no, I'm still thinking about what I've got, to be honest with you. So
I something that I kind of want to re-look at, and I don't want to sidetrack you at all, Stampy, but
You're good.
when the dispersion of Noah's family said that the Noah, and this is in chapter 9, verse 20, says the Noah, a man of soil, was first to plant a vineyard. He drank some of the wine, got drunk, and was uncovered in his tent. Then Ham, Canaan's father, saw his father's private parts and told his two brothers outside. So Shem and Japheth took the cloak and laid it over both of their shoulders and walked backwards, and with it covered their father's private parts. But their faces were turned away, so they did not see their father's private parts. When Noah woke up from his wine, he learned what his youngest son had done to him. So he said, "Cursed is Canaan, the lowest slave he will be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be Adonai, God of Shem, let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth. May he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his slave." Where did Canaan come into this?
So Canaan. So from what I understand, Canaan is serving the punishment of his father Ham for. I'm assuming what probably happened was Ham walked in and saw his dad naked and drunk, and was like went to Shem and Japheth, was like, bro, look at dad. He ain't got no clothes on. He a little tipsy on those grape juice and stuff. So and then Shem and Japheth's like, nah,
Yeah.
man, that's messed up. So they went, covered their father to try to protect his
yeah, he
dignity.
shamed him. He shamed his
and
father, so he sinned against his father. Right? You're supposed to honor your parents.
so I mean, and Ham's a father at this point. So instead of punishing Ham, he punishes Canaan,
Right.
which I mean,
I would
it
imagine that's
sounds,
the ultimate form of punishment, really, right?
yeah, because your son, like, you imagine you doing something to somebody, and this guy, like say it's the mafia, he walks up to you, right? You're a dad, and you take a bullet for your kid, right? But in this instance,
Sure.
he's like, no, you're gonna get to live as you watch your
Yeah.
own daughter
Yeah, it's going to be
suffer
your
the
child that gets the
consequences.
brunt of the punishment. So,
And so any self-respecting father would be like, no.
right.
And so, um, uh, I was gonna say something. Hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, you see this, like we were talking about in the last 5 chapters, how it's a common thing, and it's just once again the common theme of, as children we suffer the punishment of our fathers.
Mm-hmm.
very common thing. Which is, I guess, like I said, it's kind of the
Well, we reap what
and
they
it
sow, right? You can
yeah
look that
yeah
at
and
even like on like a societal level, right? Like the actions that we take as a society today will affect the next
the
generation.
generation,
So
yeah.
Oh yeah.
It-
Oh yeah.
From in and some people will be like, well, that's wrong and like that's not nice or loving and stuff like that. And like my response to stuff like that is like that's the way of life, right? So like that's how people function. Like even if you take my case, let's to get a little personal to make sure that I get my point across, right? I had to suffer for what my dad did, my dad's choices that he's made, right?
We all
And
suffer
I
for
had,
what Adam and
yeah,
Eve did too. I mean, look at
yeah.
right. Look at
And
the-
so like it's like it might suck, but it's also the fact like it's not trying to blow fairy dust in your face. It shows you this is what life is because it is this way.
Yeah.
We um and honestly like don't get me wrong, as long as Shem and his children and Japheth and his children are like decent people, like Canaan's not like suffering like that because like he just has to like because when it comes to children, as we all know, like they had the hierarchy, right? The God, the husband, the mother, the oldest, and then you go down the line. And it just and it's kind of like no, it's just put it like the youngest must serve the older. Like it's gonna already happen like that anyway, so it wasn't too much of a
A- And and
punishment.
even back then, being a slave, like even in the time of Moses, they enslaved themselves to Egypt, right? But back then it was different. It was when you enslaved yourself means yes, you will serve, you'll help, you'll tend their crops, their flocks, whatever they might have, their livestock. But at the end of the day, was you were just indebting
Indebted.
yourself to them, right?
Yeah,
It
it
wasn't.
was indebting.
Yeah, I think that even the term slave is has been tainted a little bit by of our recent, you know,
Well, yeah, even if you look
history.
at
But
it like the TVO where I'm reading, let me see if it says the same thing in the CSB real quick. But it switches out in the TSL, and I don't know. I can check King James in a second. But in the TSL, it switches out slave and servant. So blessed be Adonai, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. And then the
yep,
next part says slave. So I mean,
yep,
and there's a large difference between indebted slavery or slavery you put upon yourself and forced slavery, right? Um,
yeah, well,
and
and I
even
mean, slavery in the Bible isn't permanent either,
yeah, no, a
right?
lot of the
Like
slavery
in
they
Exodus, it
finish their
talks
stuff.
about you get 7 years. After 7 years of servitude, you're allowed to be free, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and more than that, right? It's like if you came in, like if you had a wife when you became a slave, then that master has to let you and your
wife go.
wife and any children go. Now, if there's an exception to that, which is if the master is the one that gave you the wife after you were already a slave, then he doesn't
You
have
can
to.
keep it. Yeah,
But you can then still like you can choose to still be his slave and stay with your family if you want
hmm
and all that.
and,
So
there's even the story about the
and you're not
master
even
and the slave that where the slave served his time
right,
and the slave, the servant, chose to stay with his master.
yeah,
I don't remember what scripture
yeah.
that
It
is,
talks about
but
that in Exodus too, with like
yeah.
that you can't choose and like they would have to. I think it was like punch a hole in your ear so that way you can like they know that you've surrendered
your life.
your freedom. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
you're probably treated pretty darn good if you want to punch a hole in your
Right.
ear
Yeah.
and stay with
Yeah. But
somebody, right?
Well,
in
like
that
even
particular scripture, yeah,
well
it's like if you
Exodus.
go
I
with
think
the
Exodus
master.
also talks about like masters weren't supposed to mistreat. Like
Oh
masters
no,
could
yeah,
get
they were still
punishment.
afforded
Could get
rights.
punished for like if you were to break your servant, he was to be free, and then you were on top of that to compensate him for the
Yeah,
injuries.
there was like a bunch of different things. Of like, yeah, if you injured your
Like
slave to a certain
it's
extent, then you were to set them free and to pay them
yeah,
for
it's not at
trouble. So
all
it's
what
just like,
modern slavery is.
yeah,
What people in modern times understand
as silly as
slavery.
that
Mhm.
sounds, it was a much more
Like,
respectable form of slavery compared
yeah,
to
Yeah,
and
like
no,
so
yeah.
the best way to equate it is like a butler, right? A butler is not a slave per se. He's definitely a servant,
right.
and you provide for the butler. Like you see these in movies, so that's why I'm kind of like I think that'd be one that we all understand. You see these in movies and stuff. The butler gets housing and food, but he also tends to the needs of his master. And then and in this movie form of slaves to kind of get it to finish, like 12 Years of Slavery, if everyone see that or something like back breaking bone work. They're just butt cheeks to them all day long, and like like and and that's kind of the difference between slavery in modern time understanding towards what's how God has it in Exodus, and I'm assuming this is going to happen like it translates from Noah's time down to Exodus.
No, I agree. I agree. But that definitely makes sense to me now that we've talked about that. Like, I kind of see now with that perspective when I read this scripture, or the verse when it says, "Then Ham, Canaan's father," and it even makes sure to verify that in the scripture again. Canaan's father saw, his father's private parts and told his brothers outside. That means he saw it and then he went outside to go
Yeah, to like
speak with
almost
his brothers
boast about
instead
it
of
or
either
talk
either
down.
boast, make fun of, or even the fact is he should have covered him there and then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Um,
Well, I think that it's important that it notes like, um, right, he drank so many, he passed out in his tent, right? So it's not like,
right,
oh, well, he's walking around outside naked,
right.
No, he's in
passed
his
out where
private.
everybody can see him. Like he's in his private dwelling. So it's like,
He's
for one, what are you doing in there when your dad's passed out? It's his tent. You're a
right.
grown man at that point. For
He's the first
two,
peeping tom.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Ah.
For two, like, what are you then gonna go out and be like, ha, dad's drunk and his junk's out? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
right, right.
it's just silly.
Well,
Um,
I think it's also important to note that God didn't like God's not upset with him. It's Noah. Noah's the one that curses him. God's
yeah,
never
I think
yeah, I agree.
yeah, because I think like it's like when we go back to if you go back to the like Genesis 3 and stuff, like we were made naked. We weren't
Right.
supposed to take shame, so
Exactly.
it's the embarrassment of Noah that he feels knowing that his son did that in whatever form that he did it. It's not
Yeah, being
necessarily
naked
against
isn't something to be ashamed of. So he's
yeah.
getting punished for not only attempting to shame his father and dishonoring his father, but also it's not a sin or there's nothing wrong with him being naked, especially in his own home. So
Definitely
right.
not.
I one another point I really kind of liked is in chapter 9, the beginning of chapter 9, when he's blessing Noah and his sons, and he's talking about how the fear and the terror of you will be in every wild animal and every flying creature of the sky, with everything that crawls on the ground, and with all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are given, right? And then it also says, um, lower, it says, only flesh with its life, that is its blood, you must not eat. So we're given a commandment there, right? And to drink the blood. And then it says, surely your lifeblood I will avenge. From every animal and from every person will I avenge it. From every person's brother will I avenge that person's life. So I want is that referring to he was letting Noah and his sons know that, hey, if you kill an animal to eat it, I'm going to avenge that lifeblood, right? I'm almost like an atonement in a weird way.
Blood.
Um, right, the blood. I don't know if I'm looking into that too much. It could just be saying, exactly what it states, but um, is it avenging as in like kind of how earlier in Genesis when it mentions avenging, it
Yeah.
was in a different
Yeah.
manner, right? It was the Cain and
A couple things that it might be referring to because it says surely your lifeblood I will avenge. So we're not supposed, like you said, we're not supposed to consume the blood. So if we do, we might be punished for it. It's what it might be talking about, and or maybe just unpredicated killing of animals too. I mean, because God created everything, right? So He sees good in everything. We established that. So I mean, just as we're not supposed to kill each other, especially for no good reason, um, he might not enjoy the fact, like, like, I like hunting, I enjoy hunting, but I don't go hunting unless I use the animal, right? So
Yeah.
if the meat's gonna get used and stuff, then I'll go hunting. But if I don't have any way to use that, then like it's just technically, it's not technically, it's a waste. Everything's like, I keep it for a trophy, but what good is that, like, in the actual grand scheme of things? So I don't go hunting, and I don't slaughter an animal unless I'm actually going to use that animal. And so it
Right.
might be talking about that in some senses. If you waste the life of another, you'll be punished for it. Because, I
Right.
mean, we established that all God says it again and again, that all of creation that is alive and walks on the earth, that flies in the, or that swims in the water and flies in the sky, has the breath of life. So these are things that God has personally made,
Right.
right?
Right. That's a good point.
I don't know. That's it. I'm looking at the Tony Evans Study Bible has a lot of like really good scripture notes at the bottom,
Well, go ahead, share some, man.
and it's so just to cover like 9:1 through 9:6. Said so God. So he's talking about this first conversation. Um, saying God recommissioned Noah with a command to be fruitful and fill the earth. The commission given originally to Adam and Eve. God was not abandoning his original purpose, but resetting the scene so his original purposes could go forth. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's that first initial, go out and be fruitful conversation. And then as far as what you were talking about with the animals, he says, so humanity was now free to eat meat. So the implication there being there's no reference to us eating meat prior to this point. So humanity is now free to eat meat. The only restriction God placed on this was to avoid eating meat with its lifeblood in it. Raw meat was off limits because it represented life. See Leviticus 17:11. It says for that reference. So I mean, I can open up Leviticus 17. Give me a second.
What verse is that?
17 verse 11.
All right. Let's see.
17. Now
You want me,
11.
do you want me to read that?
You can if you want. I'm on it too. So either way.
All right. 17 verse 11 says, "For the life of the creature is in the blood, and I have given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your lives. For it is the blood that makes atonement because of the life."
Yeah, that makes sense for the blood offerings that the Jews had to
So
do.
and then it goes on to say, therefore,
Yeah.
I say to the Israelites, none of you and no alien who resides among you may eat blood.
And check this out. If we keep going,
Yeah,
uh,
just reading that as well.
it says, "Nor may any outside dwelling among you eat blood." But then verse 13 it says, "Any person from," I guess it's Israel, or from the outsiders dwelling among them who hunts as game, any animal or bird that may be eaten must drain its blood and cover it with dust. For the life of every creature, its blood is its life. Therefore I said to the Israelites, you are not to eat the blood of any kind of creature, for the life of every creature is its blood. Whoever eats it to be cut off."
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
They
yeah, I
can
mean, I think
never.
that's kind of where it's going with that, right? He's just commanding them like,
Don't eat the blood.
don't eat the blood. Avoid it,
As
at
in,
least, right? He's not saying, well, you can't, right? Because inherently, right, if you're eating meat, there's always going to be, but if you're like drinking the blood or like, like going overboard or like you don't drain the blood out of like, when you kill a deer, you hang
Yeah,
it,
you're
you
supposed
drain
to
its
hang
blood.
and drain
That's
it.
just the
Yeah.
natural process of what you're supposed to do, right? But if you
yeah.
don't do
Hmm.
that and you just butcher it out, and then I think that would be
And that's
what he's
probably
talking
why
about.
butchering evolved that way, was to
Yeah, yeah.
uh
Which is interesting, right? Because
abide by.
I never knew that connection, but I would almost guarantee that's where it comes from.
Oh yeah, it's funny too because I think blood is so gross. Like I don't like raw meat. Like some people like their steak raw. or
I mean, I eat
raw,
my steak.
medium,
I eat my steak
medium,
rare for sure.
rare, and
Yeah,
me
very rare.
personally, like some people call it. I recently learned there's a term blue.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's how I eat it.
Blue steak is bad.
Just-
Blue
it's
steak
like
is
10
good.
seconds on each side. I'm like,
Yep.
what?
It's super good.
Eh,
It's like
I'm
the
Yeah.
like,
most flavorful, most tender piece of meat you'll ever eat. Yeah.
and me,
Yeah.
like, if I see pink in my food, I send it back. I can't. I don't.
I mean,
No, me
depending
and
on
Matt
what it
eat our
is, I'll
steaks
agree with you.
pretty
But
similar.
steak, steak I eat rare.
I just
At
the
the
idea.
most.
I'm just so terrified of the idea of like eating, and like I've eaten raw, like medium stuff, and I've got so sick. I don't think my stomach can necessarily handle.
It really depends on what cut of meat or how it was
And where
cut.
it comes from. Like I wouldn't
Yeah.
eat like deer meat rare, right? But
Yeah, it's a
'cause
lot.
you just can't
You're
really
iffy.
account
It's
for it. But if
iffy.
you're buying meat from a store, like the chances of you getting sick off of that
It's
are
low, but
virtually zero.
I
It's
think my
kinda like
stomach
hitting a
just
ladder.
doesn't necessarily handle
It
raw
might be
meat
somewhat
necessarily that.
psychological too, right? Like you said, you already have
It could be,
aversion to it. So
because it's like no.
because like I've definitely like there's foods that I've been grossed out by, and I felt fine before eating it, and then eating it and like talked myself into being queasy. So yeah.
I feel like I've done that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably more what it is, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I mean, who knows? Humans are so weird and different with their diets. You know, some people can't handle X, and some people can, and other people can't. You know, whatever it is. So.
A lot of it's mental too. I mean, I've definitely seen so many instances of
Well,
people
yeah, but
like
I mean, there are
chowing
like
down
a
on
lot of
something and
autoimmune
then.
disorders, right? Like your
But no, I wasn't
diet
talking.
can affect so many.
I was
things.
specifically talking about how like, I've seen people watching. I've watched people eat something, and they're like, "Oh, you know, that's this like this super gross something," and they just like, "Oh, they get sick,"
Oh
or
yeah.
even if you mess with somebody and say, "Hey, you know that has this in it," and then
Well,
like I've cooked chicken that I knew was perfectly fine. With my buddy Alex, and I told him, "Oh, dude, I think it's undercooked." Like I was just messing with him, and dude, he swore that he was feeling nauseous and
Yeah,
sick, and he
that's what I
thought he
mean. You
got
can trick
salmonella
yourself into
poison.
feeling sick. There's a lot of power in
most
your
definitely.
mental.
My sister one time we were eating what is the squid little not caviar calamari,
Yeah,
Calamari,
and
I love
and
calamari.
I'm eating it. I'm like, ooh, this is so good, so good. And my sister grabs one, pops the head, and she's like, ooh, it's like a pimple. And I was like,
you just ruined it
I had
for
a
me.
whole, I had a whole plate. I could not even pick it up to.
Yeah,
It was-
that's funny.
Yeah, I used to do that with like I could do that with any food when I was younger. Like I don't know, for some reason when I was younger, sometimes I would just like imagine like a maggot crawling on my food, and I just couldn't.
Ooh,
rice.
yeah.
Oh no, rice! Why you do
No,
this?
not
to
even
me?
rice, just anything, right? I could just be
Rice
eating
looks
like
like a maggot
broccoli and be like,
sometimes.
"Oh man," and like my brain would like pop an image of like a maggot crawling on my broccoli, and I'd be like, "Well, I'm done eating." Like,
It's funny.
Oh,
I can't
yeah.
eat now.
because
Like it literally, I'll get sick to my stomach if I do.
I was eating off of a dinner platter, like sandwich platter that we got from the food bank. I ate like 5 sandwiches, bro. Like the little like deli sandwiches for parties, right?
Mhm.
And then we get done. I find a maggot on the tray.
Yeah,
And
maggots. I don't know. There's something about maggots that make me just like.
I mean, they're bottom feeders. They're just gross.
Yeah, they're just gross.
But speaking of which, one thing I noticed with what we were talking about before in the first 5 chapters, and to this, right? We talked about I had it and then I lost it. Oh no. I because there was something I said before. Then once you read, I read. It might be the flood actually. Um, I read it as we're reading the second. It comes up with a question to go against what one of us said in the last 5. But I think I was like, well, here's the. I feel like there might be an answer to that question that is given in this passage. Now I just have to figure out what the question was given.
Well, to speak on the flood, just a question I had that might be interesting is this the first flotation device that was ever engineered?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I mean, the
I wouldn't
first
think
recorded.
so. Yeah,
I
definitely
would
first
say
recorded.
it's unlikely that it's the first ever. because Noah doesn't really react that way, and there's never any depiction that he does that in any like. To be fair, in any like like movies or anything, but like he's not really taken aback by it, right? He doesn't explain what it is. Like he tells him like build a boat with
It's an
these
arc.
dimensions and
I think
cover
I
it with
think
this and do that. So
I
it
think when
doesn't
it
feel
comes to
like
that, I think when it comes to that, it can it set like what it sounded like because he flooded the whole earth to kill everything all around the earth, right? So that means there's life as far as there's life all around the earth. Otherwise, I feel like he would have been a little bit more simplistic with his elimination of life if it was constrained to a passageway of like maybe one continent or so, right? So so what I mean to say is that given the fact that I don't think that he would have flooded the whole earth if there wasn't people and animals and stuff all over the place, that it's very likely that they could have had some form of
yeah.
naval travel. Though, I mean, there's no evidence to go against it, so or with it. So I don't.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
I
they
mean,
found out
that's
beforehand that like a tree's, or certain types of lumber can float,
I
and
mean,
Yeah,
the only thing I could say is like when you go back, I don't remember the exact part where he tells him what chapter it is where he
to build
tells
an
him
ark,
to build the ark.
six,
Is it
yeah,
six?
it's
6:13,
deliverance.
6 verse 13 is the start of
Yeah.
the instructions
End
for
of
the
all
ark.
flesh is coming before me. Make it out of gopher wood.
Make yourself an ark. Go for wood. Yeah. Yes, I mean he's not explaining to him really what it is, right? He's just like, "Hey, homie, make an ark. Here's what I want you to make it out of. Here's the dimensions." So I would assume that he knows what that is, or I
Well, an
guess at the
ark
very
is not.
least because like in Exodus, right? God inspires and teaches the carpenters or the artisans of that to be able to be masters in carpentry and stone cutting, etc., etc., and he inspires their hearts to be able to build
It could,
this
yeah, he
to
could
their
have did that. Did the same for Noah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
So it could be something like
'cause
that, maybe. I don't
an
know.
ark is also a reference like for like the Ark of the Covenant, like the way it's structured is is kind of similar. Um, but I mean, I think that's just up for imagination at that point if that was the first boat, right?
Well, I mean, at the
But
very least, it's the first recorded,
yeah,
right?
I mean, even the earlier chapters. I mean, when Adonai is talking to Adam about even naming the creatures, it doesn't mention anything in the sea, right? He has rights to. He gave names to all the livestock, the flying creatures of the sky, the animals of the field, right? But he doesn't mention anything about the sea. But at this moment, when Noah is allowed to obviously start to eat meat, is when it mentions that the fear and terror of you will be every wild animal and every flying creature of the sky, and then it also talks about with all the fish of the sea,
Right.
as well. So I don't know. I think it was just interesting, but yeah, it's definitely the first recorded. But who knows? They could have been floating down the river or something.
Right.
Um, I do know that
hmm.
Nephilim. This is after the Nephilim, right? So when the
Well, it
Yeah.
Nephilim
says
were,
that they're there prior and after, right?
Where does it say after?
The Nephilim were on the earth both in those days and afterward, when the sons of God, when the sons of the God came to the daughters of mankind who bore children to
Oh
them.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
it's chapter 6, verse 4.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. So
Mm,
I wonder, in reading the Bible, strictly the Bible, I know that's one question I've always had. Like, I mean, obviously, we talked about yesterday how we heard the different stories of the Nephilim and what they
Yeah,
could
Enoch
be.
and stuff. Yeah.
But I mean, it always raised because there's some things like the Nephilim that like there's so much obscurity and it sounds important as well, because like as far as we know, it was just Noah, his family, and animals on the boat, right?
Right.
So how, and if these Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards, how the how the heck did they survive if they were before the flood? um, which I assume that they were from reading. Now when mankind began to multiply on the face of the ground, was born to them. Then God's son, daughters were made to himself lives. Made.
Well, I think that this is slightly different because the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, right? And this is whenever God said that his spirit will not remain with humankind forever,
Yeah,
so
so
their
he
flesh.
left Earth,
Right. So that's talking about right then
and then
when
also
this speak of this,
afterwards when
and also afterwards. Doesn't necessarily say after the flood, but it said afterward, whenever the sons of God came to the daughters of men and
yeah,
gave birth to them, those were the mighty men of old, men of renown.
and
And
then
then
it
it
talked
says,
about
then
God
Adonai
seeing.
saw the
Okay,
wickedness,
yeah.
right? And then he regretted his creation, which is that was a very emotional verse actually.
Oh yeah.
Um, like just because in my version it says, so Adonai regretted that he made humankind on the earth. His heart was deeply pained. Like I like it's crazy to wrap your head around the fact that like the Lord himself was like, I will wipe out humankind who I'm create. He even mentions who I create. Like every time he goes back saying my creation, almost like he's saying my mistake, right? It seems like he's in that maybe moment of that deep regret,
Yeah, it
and
did say or at least yeah, it says he regretted it.
yeah, almost like he's blaming himself is what the perspective I got from it, which I thought was kind of what really hurt my heart a little bit. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah, because no matter how you look at it, it still emits the woe that you feel. Because I mean, you know, he's our father, and
mhm.
to like even like when I made a mistake one time, and my dad just looked at me with straight disappointment. He didn't even say anything, and that's how I knew. Like, I was like, oh crap.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I could only imagine, because like when you're reading this, it makes me feel sad. The fact that there was a point in time where my existence, I mean, it probably in my lifetime, there was a point in time where I did something, God's just like, bruh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, for real. I think I mean it even says, I mean, but it says in the earlier verses, I believe that there was evil. Every inclination of the thoughts of their heart was only evil all the time. I mean, bro, those had to be some evil sons of guns, man, especially to make God feel that way, you
And
know,
then
and
that's crazy that they all the time to think of evil all the time. Like I think, don't get me wrong, I got my temptations that I'm struggling with, but all day, every day, like I
I
feel
don't
like
know.
I feel like I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know,
hard
but
to
I feel
imagine
like for
any
me
group of
that's
people being worse than us. To be honest.
Right, right.
I
Yeah.
suck pretty bad. I'm gonna be honest with you, but to never think of God or anything good at all,
Right.
ever, that's a scary
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah, that is. I think that's why it moved, Adonai to feel that way, and he was deeply hurt. You know, um,
And it's funny
it,
because I think it also shows once again mercy, because like as we continue to go through Genesis, we'll see multiple times, just like where he exercised one of the times right now, where he could have been, he literally could have just started over. Didn't have to give Noah a chance. Like he didn't have to give Adam a chance again.
Right.
mhm,
I mean, don't get me
right.
wrong, like he killed everything, but it's also within his right as our creator, as our
Oh
father,
yeah,
All that, and it was
and
just too. It was
yeah,
fully just.
and it wasn't unpredicated.
Right.
Like we
Yeah, it
were
wasn't like
evil,
we were all sitting down here singing "Kumbaya," you know,
and so
hanging out with each other, and God was like, you know what, dog? I feel like I want to start over. Like,
and it's
yeah.
crazy because this is even before Jesus, and yet he's extremely merciful.
yeah,
Right, right, right.
yeah,
And even
far
he had
more
his own
merciful than
kind,
what most of us would be.
and all
Probably,
on top of all of this. Oh, most definitely
yeah.
more merciful than
Well,
us. But
I said
uh,
probably, but I don't know why. But the first thing I thought of
I
was
was
like
just
my teacher telling me that I had a teacher who's like, you said more merciful than us, and I don't know why I said probably, but that's probably because I thought of my teacher. He one day during class he told us, he's like, if I was president, I'd kill every inmate or like criminal in the penitentiaries, and that just
Oh
kind of
man.
like that scared me because like I think my dad's a great man, but he's a convicted felon, right?
Right.
He's made
Right.
his mistakes in life, and he's paid the society's what society deems to be worthy of the crime.
Hmm.
Um, I've definitely lied, cheated, stolen before,
Well, yeah. Who among us hasn't sinned, right?
and so
Yeah.
it just scared me because like I feel like I could. There's no way I could like as much as I hate the fact that people do the nasty things that we do to each other. There's no way I feel like I just like off them all.
Right.
I can understand the rapists and the murderers. Like I don't agree, but I can understand that. But everyone,
Right. Well, yeah. Well, I think
I
it's
think
important to
that
remember that, like, even like the distinction there, right, is uh, like there's even the most evil people on our planet that you can think of have good in them, whereas these people that
apparently they had none.
pre-flood had zero. So it's like, think of the worst
right.
person that you can imagine, right? For a lot of people, it's probably going to be like Hitler, Stalin, something like that, like some evil,
Yeah.
atrocious person. There's still good in those people, however
Oh
little,
yeah.
right? However little that may be, there's still more good in them than that of.
It's funny you said that because I've had
Pre-flood.
people ask me. They're like, "You think Hitler? You think Hitler could be in heaven?" I was like, "Probably. He
Yeah,
could.
he could be, sure.
If the
He
guy
has that
literally
right.
was, because every I think when God judges us, like it says in Revelations, He judges our heart,
Right.
and I don't think God limits our ability to go to Him in any time frame, but within our living in or on Earth. So if at the very last 10 seconds or 1 second of my life, God could tell that if I was to be able to live again, I would be different,
Right.
or as much as I could be different. I think that's enough for God to look at me and see that. And so
Right.
if and I think that could be for anyone, anywhere, at any
Oh
time.
yeah. I mean, we don't know. To use the example, right? We don't know what happened prior to. We don't know Hitler,
He could
right?
have
He
regretted.
was in
Yeah, he
that
could have
bunker.
regretted
He
that
could have
right when he
regretted
died.
everything that he did, asked for forgiveness, and then killed himself.
Yeah. And one thing too, I wanted to point out just a little bit earlier, just to kind of also uh, just the more treachery that was going on, is that the sons of God, right, are the ones that came down and created the Nephilim. So it's actually, I'm not sure if was it the fallen angels already, or was it the angels that were in heaven looked down upon them and saw that uh, they were beautiful, and so they came down and made bodies for themselves, right, and bred with these women. And so you even had, there's just so much treachery going on at this moment. You know what I mean? Like even the angels were betraying God and given into this evil inclinations. And he had all of that going on. I mean, people that literally are with God.
I guess
You
yeah,
know?
that makes sense because it makes the distinction between the sons of God and daughters of men. So I'm assuming that if it was, it would also be the daughters of God and sons of men to differentiate. So I think that makes sense to that why it makes the different clean because I think it says the same thing in the CSB. Let me switch over
Oh,
there.
and that's for sure the story, like the Nephilim, because they came down. They taught them dark arts. They taught them how to
Magic,
use
blacksmithing.
magic,
Well,
blacksmithing.
it said it's funny you say that because I believe didn't it say that Canaan was the father? Hold on. Canaan was the father of like bronze working somewhere, maybe. I feel like
Yeah, I think I saw that too.
it might be the
Um,
genealogy. Hold on, let me check the genealogy somewhere.
it definitely
But
was. It was something. I remember seeing that because I remember hearing the bronze.
and that's the first thing that popped in my head. It was the bronze and copper working was like because I've heard that like and it might just be the fact because I've heard that weapon making was an art taught to us by the fallen.
Mhm.
Sorcery. I've heard that. I haven't read it anywhere, but I mean, I feel like a lot of things are rooted in some form of truth, no matter how obscure they or obscure they may be. Let me see if I
Right.
can find this right here. Control F. Find it. Sons. Let me go back to 5. Canaan. Canaan's not in here. It has to be chapter 6, 7. Orange God, Noah, the flood. I know we read it because I heard it. I heard it. Yeah, I hear it again in my head. Just want to find it.
Hmm.
Let me just try.
Okay, it's okay, it's chapter 4 verse 19 all the way down to 22. It says 21 his brother's name was Jubal. He was the pioneer of all who skillfully handled string instruments and wind instruments. Verse 22 says, now Zillah also gave birth to Tubal Cain, the forger of every kind of bronze and iron tools.
Okay. So yeah. So
Tubal
that's
Cain's
what.
sister was Naamah. That's tools, though. I think
Yeah, the
the
weaponry. I think most of us would consider weaponry and tools separate. So
yeah,
yeah.
for sure, because I mean they created tools. I mean, even says
To
turn
do the
your
work.
swords. What's the scriptures? You will beat your swords into plowshares and or your swords into pruning shears. Like
Yeah, you turn
in
it into a
Revelations,
tool.
I believe it talks about even turning your weapons back into to tools, right?
Yeah.
And
So okay. Yeah. I thought I knew I saw it. I remember seeing bronze somewhere.
yeah, that's what it
Um,
was.
and definitely. Yeah. So I mean, it makes sense because we learn all this stuff apparently after or once the creation of the Nephilim. It's a scary because it makes me. It's scary because let me go back to the Nephilim text because it says the Nephilim were on these days were on the earth in those days and also afterwards. Wherever the sons of God came to, whenever the sons of God came to the daughters of men and gave birth to them, they were those were the mighty men of old, men of renown. So it's like I think the way I can like equate that would be like in Norse mythology, where like uh, what Zeus would come down, mate with a human female, make a demigod, and just like bolt out of there. And because like wasn't I feel like somewhere someone suggested I've heard the concept of Goliath was a Nephilim, and that's why him and his brothers were so big.
Yeah, there's a lot of like
And
the Book
so
of Enoch talks about that.
So it's interesting to hear about that. It tells that a lot of men, a lot of mighty, renowned, or famous people, however you may phrase it, from long ago, or it might even be still today, um, are sons of what God would consider an abomination. Because I believe that's what it said in the text before was that the mating between angels and humans resulted in an abomination that we know as the Nephilim. And I mean, I just think that's an interesting um, thing that it points out. I mean, it holds some form of importance because I don't think there's just things that are just wasted upon in the Bible. Um, and I think it also helps us root the understanding, like you said, as well as hearing the fact that apparently almost all of humankind had only evil in their heart at that time. Just, I mean, irks God's wheel when he
Not
sees
even
all this.
almost, literally everybody but
But
Noah and
Noah,
his
yeah.
family. Yeah. So like
Yeah,
everybody
because
but like 4 people, 5 people.
Enoch has already been taken to heaven at this point.
Yeah. Enoch was
Right.
taken 300 years after he was born,
Yeah.
and then I think it's another like 400 years before Noah. or this stuff that happens with Noah, because he's 600, I think, when this happens.
Yeah, 600
Um,
and then 601 when they land.
Yeah, and
It
it was
really,
interesting too because he also had to deal with Cain, right? Cain's lineage, because it says in the end of chapter 4, which was kind of the stepping stones of Cain and Abel being born, all the way to the end of it. It says in chapter 25 when it says Adam was intimate with his wife again, she gave birth to a son. She named him Seth, for God has appointed me another seed in place of Abel, since Cain killed him. But it says in 26, to Seth also was born a son. He named him Enosh. Then people began to call on Adonai's name. So I wonder if it was like through all of that. I don't know, but part of that makes me believe that there was definitely they were distancing themselves from him, right? Obviously. I mean, Cain was a wanderer. He said he removed himself from the presence of the Lord, right?
and they probably fell away. It wouldn't surprise me if Cain's lineage is probably what ended up populating a lot of the world before the flood
Oh yeah.
as well.
I also think it's
Well, yeah, because it doesn't say that Enoch had any children.
No, it says
right?
Enoch
right.
had one child. All right. Well, it names one child and it says fathered other sons and daughters. But um, but I think it's like at this point though, like we're probably getting into the point once you get down Enoch, methyl. I can't the meth guy.
or Methuselah.
Yeah.
Methuselah.
No,
Yeah.
right after Enoch's son, and then Lamech. It wouldn't surprise
hmm
me once we started getting down to Noah's time that they're also intertwining Seth's lineage with Cain's
Right.
as well. And
Oh
so
yeah.
Cain's already away from God. Um, and even though Enoch loved, because Enoch loved God so much that apparently God, uh, he didn't die, for God just took him straight up to heaven. But then his lineage is mixing with Cain's, and then Cain's probably has disdain for God, given for his punishment, um, from his actions with his brother, and so it wouldn't surprise me because like a lot of children are products of their parents, um,
Right.
and so it wouldn't surprise me if he's also taught his children to be away from God,
Right.
and I think you can see what I'm trying to because I keep stuttering.
No, you're fine.
um, the mixing between the two different families and apparently and obviously the one probably, I mean there's no proof, but probably having a disdain for God probably helps spin the toilet bowl straight down the drain when it comes to there being a point where there's everyone but what 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 people on the planet having some good in their hearts,
Right.
which once again is a terrifying aspect because it feels like that's probably where our world is heading right now. Well, I mean, it is where our world is heading if Revelation is any true, which we believe it to be.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it
No, I
feels like
agree.
it's definitely trending that way.
I do have a question. I do have a question. What you guys think about this? In chapter, this is kind of going back, but just kind of is all kind of tying together for me. But in chapter 4, um, after Cain receives his punishment from Adonai, it says in verse 16, it says, then Cain left Adonai's presence and dwelled in the land of wandering east of Eden.
mm-hmm.
It's almost like there was it was a specific land of wandering. I don't know how exactly was there a land that he was just banished to,
It could
and
be,
and
and
also, I'm sorry, and also it is that a signification of Cain left God. God didn't leave Cain. Um, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because
but
his
it
Cain
says
left.
yeah
God
because it
wouldn't
says it
leave
in
even
13
them.
as well. I must hide from your presence and become a so I mean it might be because I don't know. We don't necessarily know. But he might have been like too ashamed to be around God, and then that could have
Yeah.
festered into hatred. Or maybe he never ended up hating God and just accepted his punishment. It was like, I must be away from you for right now, for I'm not any good. But like in the CSB, it has the land of Nod, whatever that means. Let me see. It has a little footnote. So let me see. F. Yeah, it says wandering. So I guess it translates to wandering. Um, it could have just been at the time empty by wandering, because like um, I would assume that if there was cities and stuff already established from the other families and whatnot, people wouldn't be wandering, right? They'd be around and there. But if he goes to start off by himself, I mean, it would make sense it's the land of wandering because it's nothing but untamed forest or savanna or wherever he's at. So untamed land. So he would then be doomed at that time for there to
Sorry,
be
guys.
wandering.
Yeah, it says the word
You're good.
nod in Hebrew means wanderer, exile, or fugitive.
Yeah, so he could have been banished. I mean, I don't see where it says
It could be called the land of the
let's go out of
wanderer.
the field
So,
and killed him. Where is your brother? So it doesn't say that like uh it doesn't say that God like pushed him away or anything. He says, "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So you're cursed, alienated from the ground that opens its mouth to receive your brother's blood that you've shed. And then the punishment, if you work the ground, it will never again give you its yield. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." So, I mean, with the restless wanderer, maybe that was at the time God saying you're banished, but nothing, as far as I understand, to be clear cut. Besides Cain being like, "I can't be in your presence. I must hide from you."
yeah, this one has an
Yeah.
interesting perspective. What I'm reading. So, it says, though God had driven Cain from his home, it was Cain's choice to live outside the presence of God. Essentially,
Mm,
Cain's punishment in becoming a wanderer and a fugitive was to lose all sense of belonging and identification with the community. Living in
mm,
the land of Nod, Cain lived without roots in isolation. For his sin, Cain was made a castaway and later became a godless, hollow person in the land of Nod. Upon separating himself from God, Cain built a society totally detached from God. The Bible tells us children of Cain followed in his path and established a godless civilization.
That would then make sense if they're over. If then, once you get to Noah, they're also mingling with the rest of the world, and
well,
soon.
did Cain give birth to Canaan, right?
No, Cain was
That
impotent with his
was
wife. He gave birth to Enoch.
yeah.
Then Cain. What's interesting? So I wonder if there was two Enochs or what. I don't know, because like when you look at the genealogy, as far as I understand, it goes down Seth's genealogy. But apparently, but it says 17, chapter 4. It says Cain was intimate with his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Enoch. Then Cain became a builder of a city, and he named it Enoch after his son. Edward was born to Enoch, father of Methuselah,
Mhm.
which is interesting because these are all the names in the Methuselah father Lamech. So, I mean, that's interesting because right here in chapter 4 it tells us. Let me copy this page
Which
so I can
chapter
have
are
it.
you in? You're in chapter
Chapter
5?
chapter
Chapter
4,
4.
Genesis
Oh, 4.
4. Let me duplicate. Let me go back to the genealogy.
Because the genealogy kind of starts in
It goes.
5
It's yeah,
a little bit.
because it says that Cain gave birth to Enoch. Enoch uh had Idrid. Idrid had Mehujael. Mehujael had Meth. Meth had Lamech. And that is the last part of the genealogy for chapter 5, right? So Lamech, then Methuselah, Enoch. It just doesn't talk about
Methuselah.
Mehujael. I'm just gonna call him Jael. So Jael. It doesn't talk about Jael. Jael's not in there, but it's interesting because over here it starts with Seth. Seth gave Enosh. Enosh went to Canaan. Canaan to Mahalalel, then to Jared, then to Enoch. So I don't know
Yes.
because
I
it says the line
wonder.
of Seth.
Yeah, are you talking about when it goes into chapter 5 when it starts
Yeah,
talking about the
chapter
lineage? But
five.
it doesn't.
Yeah, chapter 5 goes from Adam to Lamech. Is apparently, from what I understand, is supposed to be Seth's lineage, but the last what 1, 2, 3 people in Seth's lineage are the names for what it says to be Cain's lineage in chapter 7, and it goes from Enoch to Idred. So it doesn't have Idred in there, but it has Mehujael, Methman, and Lamech. So unless I mean it wouldn't, they might have just used the same names. That's definitely a possibility, but it's definitely a correlation. They're using the same names there.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, there could have been two different Enochs because it says that Jared lived 160 years, then fathered Enoch. Jared lived 800 years after he fathered Enoch. And then it says Enoch fathered Methuselah, which
Which
lines
is
up.
back, yeah,
That lines up because it says that an Enoch was born Arad. Oh, then it says Arad fathered
Mehujael,
Mehujael
and
and
then
Methuselah.
Meth, and then Meth Man.
It could have been
So
breaking it down. It could have been breaking it down into separate parts or important parts.
well,
Maybe I don't know.
well, I know the big thing is this is Cain's, right? It starts with Cain. The one in chapter 5 starts with Seth. So I don't know.
Well, it does
Like,
say
and
in the
it
bottom half of it does say Adam was intimate with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son. She named him Seth, for God has appointed me another seed in place of Abel, since Cain killed him. To Seth also was born a son. He named him
Enoch.
Enosh. Then people began to call Adam. I was like, maybe that's why it's replaced. It's like replacing Seth
It could be.
instead of Cain. I wonder.
Mm, maybe, but that doesn't sound. It
Yeah, I don't
doesn't
think that's
sound
the
right.
case.
Yeah, maybe not.
It might just be
I think the
names,
simplest answer is probably the correct answer, to be honest here. I mean,
which is
there's a
just
time
names.
difference at any rate, right, between
Because this
the
is not going
first
to be the
Enoch
first
and the
time where we
second
see.
Enoch.
Yeah, because this is not going to be the first time we see where they have like you have multiple names for people that sounds like these are individual people, like each one. Because I know like there's one where
I'd find it also
where
interesting, side note, that
hmm.
it doesn't give any of the lifespans of any of the people in Cain's lineage,
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice that. Yes.
but it does for every other lineage.
Hmm. Uh, I don't know why, but the first thought that came to me was that I guess it wasn't important for Cain's lineage to discern a time difference between things, between Noah and Adam, maybe. That's just what
Maybe.
popped in my head.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, yeah.
Mm. But
Hmm.
I had something. What was I gonna say? I don't know. Oh, well, there's an instance in the Bible where it talks about the reigning, the dynasty of some people reigning over Jerusalem, and it goes over this guy twice. But I'm pretty sure it talks about the family dynasty and then the individual name of the guy who shared the name with the family. So it could be just similar names, because which makes sense to me because I mean they are brothers, so I'm assuming that even though they were godless, I mean if Seth was a good brother, or I don't know, they could have.
What about, so I'm reading the subnotes again, and it says, so Cain's, so it's talking about, 4:17 through 24. It says, Cain's murderous ways infect his family line. By the time we get to his great great grandson, we find a man bragging about his own violence. And it quotes, I killed a man for wounding me. Lamech boasts in chapter 4, verse 23. Notice, too, that Lamech is talking to his wives. God's perfect design is only 4 chapters old, and already we find people reveling in bloodshed and ignoring his design for marriage. Then it goes on to say, chapters 4, verses 25 through 532. In place of Abel, God gives or granted Eve a son named Seth. In connection with Seth, people began to call on the Lord. Hundreds of years later, Noah would come from this line of Seth. So it's almost, I wonder if it's like a, for lack of a better term, like a yin and yang, right? So it's
It
like the
could be
duality
the
of man,
opposite.
so to speak, right? You have the
It's
line
funny you
of
say that.
Cain, and you have like these murderous, wrathful, vengeful people, and then you have the line of Seth that obviously leads to Noah, and they're both coexisting in this one environment, and maybe that's brought to light by the two Enochs, right? So you have an Enoch that's presumably evil, and you have an
Yeah,
Enoch
one who
that comes from a line that's good and loves God so much, and God loves him so much that he takes him to heaven outright.
yeah. It definitely could. My dad always said, it's funny you said, because my dad's always said God is all about balance.
Yeah.
And so, but
When you said that, it made
it's
me think of the Shift movie for some reason, Matt. When you said that, I don't know. Like, wait, what if there's two different Enochs?
Well,
but
yeah,
it
That
probably
that
is
would
because
definitely from
Enoch
the reading,
Enoch
there's
just
definitely two.
Enoch in Hebrew means the one to be trained up. So I mean, and like even in today's society, like people pick names for meanings and people pick names for symbolism. So it's I mean, I guess it's not really surprising for them to be now that I think like I probably was just overthinking it, trying to find some hidden meaning in the fact that they probably just named their firstborn, or well, I guess not firstborn for Seth, because after Seth was Enosh, but Cain was Enoch, which is probably the difference. Because when you look at the like lineage side by side, starting with Cain and Seth, the names don't add up. Like to be equal, Cain, Enoch, Seth, Enosh, then Enosh to something, and then Enoch to Idrid, but Enosh to Kenan. So it doesn't. I'm not gonna go with they probably had just similar names because they seem to not correlate besides the names.
Well, I'm not
and
saying that's
and
not what I was
it makes
saying.
sense for what. Yeah, no, that was just my
Yeah, it just
thought
feels
I was
like it's
sharing.
like there's no is so the reason I think that there's the Bible is intentionally written exactly as it is. And there's not really
Agreed.
very many, if any, examples that I can think of two other names in the Bible that match. Right? Like through all the lineages, I can't think of very many, if any, lineages that match the same name.
I'm pretty sure. Well, I don't think lineages, but I'm pretty sure wasn't. Hold on, let me think. Let me see. Just think. Wasn't there two Peters? One had a different name because of the name Jesus gave him.
He gave him the name, yeah, but his name wasn't Peter. It was like I don't remember what his technical name is, but
yeah, I don't either.
It's kind of weird because
The Rock.
when it says Cain was intimate with his wife, yada yada yada, he to Enoch was born Irad, right?
Irad.
Oh, I see. Never mind. Yeah, this does make a little bit more sense actually. Hold on.
Yeah, I had to pull him up. I had to put him like side by side on my screen to read it. And
yeah, I don't know.
At first, I was like,
maybe
"Oh, this
I'm
lines
looking
up."
too much into it, but it almost just feels
No,
like
I mean,
it's like a yin and yang sort of thing.
You know what's
it
really
could be
interesting?
both.
You know what's
Could be
really
both.
interesting is if you start to look into the names in chapter 5, some of them mean like glory of God. They mean different things, right? But whereas Cain's son Irad, the biblical baby names, the meaning of the name Irad is wild ass, heap of empire dragon. Also, uh suggests the meaning of runner or fugitive. Which, I mean, doesn't that kind
A
of
lot
make
these names
sense?
correspond to that.
Right? Doesn't
But
that kind of make
That's
sense
crazy.
though? With
Yeah, because that is Cain, child or grandchild technically.
when that Irad was his child.
I read
'Cause-
grandchild because Cain, Enoch,
Oh,
I read.
Enoch was born
what's the
Irad.
What's the? You looked up what's the what's the Hebrew definition for the name?
I looked up meaning of the name and then I put in whatever name and then I looked at the Hebrew.
Okay, do me a favor. Do that same
yeah.
thing with Jared.
Spell that for me.
Jared.
Ed.
Every kiss begins with K.
Because I might be
Origin is
forgetting.
Hebrew. Jared is a boy's name of Hebrew origins, meaning he descends.
He descends. And what was Irad? It was dragon, right? Ascends.
Dragon, runner, fugitive. Yeah. It was ass. I think was the term for it.
So hear me out, right?
Yeah.
So I want to just read something here. So let's see here. So you have obviously Enoch and Enoch, right? But you also have there's a lot of correlation between these names. So Irad and Jared are both similar, right? Like obviously there's a little bit different spelling, but they sound very similar. And I mean, on the face level, I don't think that like they sound extremely similar. But the reason I pointed out is if you look at so for Cain we have Mehuhajel, right? And then you also for Seth you have Mahalalel. So those sound similar as well, but they sound juxtaposed to each other, right? But well there's a couple of different examples. Okay, well then what about Methushalel or Methushael, or however the hell you pronounce it? And then you have Methuselah. You see what I'm saying?
Oh.
You see what I'm saying? Doesn't that seem like they're the same, but the opposite?
Let me look
Yeah.
it up real quick.
It's kind of like the yin and yang.
Yeah. Isn't that what it feels like?
That is kind of what it feels like. For me, the interesting part is.
And they even Lamech.
Yeah. I'm gonna look that one up next.
Meth Man. I was so unable to pronounce the name that I was just reading meth. I didn't even notice the ending.
They are
Methuselah
different.
and Methuselah. So I would be curious you're doing those ones. I want to look these ones up.
So apparently, from what this one website says, Methusael is man of God, extension of God, man who is of God, yawning gulf of death. Oh, extremity of death. That went deep.
Okay, here's another thing too. When you look up the meaning of Enoch,
right?
Because over here it says in verse 17, chapter 4, it says that Cain was intimate with his wife, became pregnant, gave birth to Enoch, right?
Yeah.
And he was building a city. Now, to the meaning of it is dedicated, trained, discipline, right? But it also says later in, this is the origin, it says the unique name was also borne by a leading figure in Torah and Hebrew Bible. Enoch was the son of Jared, the father of Methuselah, and the great-grandfather of Noah, which all lines up with chapter 5.
Yeah.
It doesn't mention that he was the son of Cain, as we see in chapter 4, verse 17.
Wait, say that again, sorry?
So, it says that obviously his name is dedicated, trained, discipline. That's Enoch, right? But it says here that Enoch was the son of Jared, the father of Methuselah, and the great-grandfather of Noah. It doesn't say that Enoch was the son of Cain. It's not even referring to that. It's referring as they're separate people. So there's two different Enochs.
Yeah,
here.
right. That's my
definitely.
point. That's my point.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
But they all.
Oh no, I'm reaffirming your point. Yeah.
Right, but like the correlation between those, it feels too similar to me to be coincidence. Like I would say even. How do I? Okay, I want to.
Okay, which ones are you looking up, Matt?
Hold on.
Because there's Methuselah and there's Methuselah.
I have.
He had Methuselah.
I have
Okay.
Meheyu. I have. Oh, I can't pronounce
I'm looking at
names.
Methuselah.
I have Methuselah on my. It says in. Or this is Wikipedia. Let me find something besides Wikipedia.
Methuselah is another good one. It's the one who was sent.
From the Bible, many mispronounce.
Right.
Stay tuned to learn more.
It's funny you say that. Well,
Jared.
Wiki says
Jared.
his death shall send, or man of the javelin, which makes sense because you send javelins, and then death of sword.
Well, keep in mind, Metu, is derived from the word mot, meaning death, right?
So they both have
Which is
death in
Hebrew.
their name. Oh no, Methuselah.
No,
Methusael and
Met-
Methuselah.
Metu, right?
Metu.
Metushael.
Yeah, exactly.
Metushiel.
And
Metushiel and
Metushalah.
Yeah, they're definitely different. It's so funny because if we
They're
would
different,
have
but
got
they're-
on this, I
They're
wouldn't have even.
so, they're similar enough that they seem juxtaposed.
So Methuselah was that, and then Meth.
so this one
Methuselah.
thing says that Metushalah is combination of Metu and Shalah. Strong's dictionary states that this name means man of the dart, which makes sense. Like you said man, the one who sends or something, right? So according to Strong, the root for Metu is the word mat, which means man. And the word for Shalach means a weapon or missile, hence the translation to dart.
That's for Metushael.
Yeah, the Shalah, Metushalah.
See, because I got.
How
Are
are
you talking
you
about?
spelling that? Because it's Selah.
Yeah, Selah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm looking up this. I'm still on the ones with Cain's lineage, and in chapter or verse 18 in chapter 4 says Methushel, Shiel.
Yeah, Metushael.
That one means who demands his death. That's what the Hebrew biblical name is. So far everything on Cain's side is
Not great.
no good.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
so from what he's saying, that it's not great for what you call it either. To be honest, unless I'm misunderstanding it, but it's not. None of the names are fantastic. Let me hold on.
Yeah, because here's one. Now this is
Yeah,
this is interesting. Now Irad fathered Mehuhel, right? Which is in also verse 18. Mehuhel
apparently
means
means smitten or to destroy. Smitten by God or destroyed by God.
yeah. There's different. Yes, that's the destroyed of God, smitten of God. Yeah. Okay. Excuse me. There we go.
That's crazy. And then the Methushael. Yeah, that's the one I was reading earlier. I was like, oh, that sounds good. Man of God, extension of God, the man who is of God. And then the very next definition for it goes yawning gulf of death, the extremity of death.
Yeah. Make sure you're looking at the Hebrew.
Let me see
Because
if I can find a Hebrew breakdown.
there's a Hebrew Lamech, which is the striker down, the wild man, or a strong youth.
Yeah, let me see this one.
Now,
Hebrew
because even
Strong.
says here are two persons named Lamech in the Bible, but Lamech biblically says that it also means poor, made low.
Yeah, so it seems like a lot of the names, like they were close together, like, and it sounds like Enoch, Mehuel, and Lamech. Seems like they're like we were saying, the yin and yang. So like the name has a positive meaning and a negative meaning depending on how it was used in their language.
I also wonder if Lamech also having somewhat of a negative name. At that point, he fathered Noah, right? Lamech.
Yeah, Lamech was the father of Noah
So
on Seth's side.
it almost makes sense that things started to dwindle and morality started to disappear, and maybe that's why Lamech at that point was called that.
I found an
Um,
interesting
be.
website that has all of them. So Enoch, obviously, we talked about that earlier.
Yeah,
Means
the one to
teaching or
train up.
commencement. But so for Methuselah,
Mhm.
which would be Seth's line, as an interesting reason for it. So it says, the flood of Noah did not come as a surprise. It had been preached on for 4 generations. But something strange happened when Enoch was 65, from which time he walked with God. Enoch was given a prophecy that as long as his son was alive, the judgment of the flood would be withheld, but as soon as he died, the flood would be sent forth. Enoch named his son to reflect this prophecy. The name Methuselah comes from 2 roots: muth, a root that means death, and from salak, which means to bring or to set forth. Thus, the Methuselah signifies his death shall bring. Um, and indeed, the year that Methuselah died, the flood came. And it goes on. But so
Interesting. That's kind of
that's according to
oh,
this. I don't know
oh,
how.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense with
So,
the numbers we're given here, because
okay,
says Methuselah lived 187 years and fathered Lamech, right? And this
well, we'll
was
grab a calculator real quick.
So
So
it
he
says,
was
okay, so it says, and indeed in
187.
the year Methuselah died, the flood came. Methuselah was 187 when he had Lamech and lived
yep.
782 more years. Lamech had Noah when he was 182. The flood came in Noah's 600th year. So 187 plus 182 plus 600 equals 969, which is Methuselah's age when he died.
Oh yeah, I see
When
that.
Noah
Yeah,
was
yeah.
600 years old when the flood came.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, he was 600, and then he landed at 601 after the flood.
That makes sense when you add. I was about to say,
It
like, if
says it
you
is
do
interesting
the
that
numbers.
Methuselah's life was in effect a symbol of God's mercy in forestalling the coming judgment of the flood. It is therefore fitting that his lifetime is the oldest in the Bible, symbolizing the extreme extensiveness of God's mercy.
Mm, that's deep.
That's all. Yeah, because what I was reading says that as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like, apparently Methuselah also has it has like what I was saying, the Mandart meaning, and then like you were saying their death sentence or his death sentence meaning as well.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you just love Hebrew? I like, generally Hebrew is such an interesting language.
I would like to learn Hebrew and read like the Bible in its original translation. I think that would be really cool.
I wish I want to learn, hopefully if I get a chance, I want to learn the Greek and Hebrew because I would like to read it as well. I would like to, to be able to read it in its original, or as far as we understand to be original written state.
Whoa. Here's something interesting. I'm going to share my screen.
Ooh.
And this is kind of freaking wild. I'm not gonna
Oh,
lie.
the other guy left. I didn't even know.
Yeah, he left a while
Yeah, he
ago.
left a long time ago.
You can see my screen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Look at this. Look at this. So here's the Hebrew, right? And look at the
Uh-huh.
correlation in English. Man,
Man
appointed mortal, sorrow, the blessed God shall come down, teaching his death shall bring, the despairing reset, arrest, or comfort. And that's the lineage.
Well, I just got chills. That's
That's like
crazy.
Seth's lineage from Adam.
Yeah.
Noah.
Man appointed mortal. Man appointed mortal sorrow. Blessed God shall come, teaching his death shall bring. I feel like that's talking about Jesus.
It makes so much sense though, because like even if you in chapter 5 verse 29 it said Lamech, I'm just gonna paraphrase, Lamech named Noah, right? And he said, "This one will comfort us from our work and from the pain of our hands, because the ground which Adonai cursed." So I mean, Lamech being the despairing also
Yeah.
really makes sense,
It
and
even
like
goes on to say it. I'm sorry, go ahead. I just
No,
think
I was just gonna say if you kind of tie these names in with kind of how where they were at in the lineage and the genealogy, it kind of all makes sense. Like their names being that. It just makes me wonder, was that inspired by God? Because if you look at that, you can almost read that in a row, right? Like obviously we both
well, that's
all
what it's
did that.
saying here, right? Here is the summary of
Read this,
God's
yeah.
plan of redemption. Hidden here within a genealogy of Genesis, you will never convince me that a group of Jewish rabbis deliberately contrived to hide the Christian gospel right here in a genealogy within their venerated Torah. So they're saying this is God talking about the redemption plan for Jesus coming down.
Yeah, I'm about to say because that sounds
Because
like
Adam
man
means
appointed
man.
mortal.
hidden.
Man appointed mortal, the blessed
Adam
God,
means man, yes.
shall come down, teaching his death shall bring the despairing rest and comfort.
I guess we should look
that's
up
Jesus.
and see. We should look up and make sure these all mean that. In
Well,
English,
like
right?
that's what. So
Like Adam
I
and
was doing
man.
that while we were talking. So Adam and man, Seth, I've seen that on here. Enosh, I also talks about man. So man, mortal, and then Canaan. Depending on how you spell it, it could be possession wise, or the other way you spell it means to mourn, lament, or sorrow after.
Interesting. Okay.
And
So
then
that
Okay,
makes sense.
Okay, Seth is correct, but I just looked it up. It means Seth or place, Seth means appointed.
Okay.
So
Jared
Okay,
Seth
so
is one.
Enosh was mortal. So we've established these three.
and then
Did we
I'll
Jared means
look.
establish
he's.
mortal for Enosh?
I'm doing that
Yeah.
right now. I'm doing that right now.
And then, well, Jared is he descends, so shall come down.
And so you confirmed this one?
Okay,
Yeah.
wait. Hold on.
Or at least it's on another website. I mean, I can't.
Yeah, I mean, well,
It-
yeah, we can only do so much, right?
It says Enosh denotes man as frail and mortal.
Okay, well,
Make sense.
yeah.
Mortal.
And we
'Cause,
know
like, 'cause
Enoch
that's what I
means
saw,
Okay,
Enosh.
here's the more important part. Enos was, I believe, how it was actually in Hebrew, which means mortal man, even in Hebrew.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, then that one check. So these all check out up to
Mhm.
this point.
And then let me.
What
And then
about
Methuselah.
we established
Definitely
that one.
Methuselah is his death shall bring. And then
Lamech
Lamech. Let me do
and
that.
then Noah.
Lamech.
It says Lamech is the strike. Okay, this is in Hebrew. The strike down, the wild man, or a strong youth, a source of great or sudden wealth or luck, a burden, a hindrance, impediment, uh, poor made low.
I see the low. I found the one to be low definition. It's this one that I found says this is one of the names in the Bible that's very difficult to translate, as the root of this word then gives the Hebrew root is not used
Lament.
anywhere else in the Bible, in the biblical text, and therefore the meaning of this root word or name is impossible to determine with any degree of accuracy. One possible interpretation of this is the verb can't. I don't know what that means, but the verb, then the Hebrew again, meaning low, or prefixed by the word or prefixed by another letter meaning to be low, which I guess makes sense because
The
the despairing, like that, you're low in life.
Yeah, you're losing all hope.
Well, you
Yeah.
despaired, right? I mean, that we all know what that means. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, that you're
it's
low. You're not
and
high, I
then
tell you that much.
and then we know
I think
Noah
it's
because this is
interesting. Another
Noah's.
definition here. Lamech
Right here.
was named Lamech, a root of still a root still evident today in our English word lament or lamentation. Lamech suggests despairing. His name is also linked to Lamech in Cain's line, who inadvertently killed his son Tubal Cain in a hunting incident.
Whoa! How do they know that? That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know where that last part comes from, but
I mean, and Noah. I think we all. I mean, it says it right here in Scripture. It's not necessarily giving us. If you look it up, Noah in English means rest or comfort. But if even here in verse 29 it says that this one will comfort us from our work.
I found one thing that says Noah comes from the Hebrew word nosh, which means rest or repose. Also comes from the Babylonian word means nukuk, which means rest or repose. So in the biblical name for the Old Testament, yeah. So I guess
That's pretty straightforward.
yeah, in Babylonian and Hebrew it means the same thing.
I mean,
Which- and
please check out then.
And it's funny because like I don't know about you guys, but for the most part, I don't believe in coincidences.
Oh,
'Cause
100%.
Coincidences
Not in the Bible.
No.
Okay,
Well,
also
just even in
too,
real life, but like
if
when it comes to the Bible, though, like there's some of these things that mean whatever it means in English, like itself, when you do
Dude.
the like Latin and root translations and Greek and stuff of
Right.
our words, and that's like, there's no way that it doesn't mean that. Or at least in my head, it goes like, there's no way it doesn't mean that when like even in our own language, through the thousands of years of cultivation, and then the fact that English is a cultivation of 5 different languages in a mosh posh.
Including Hebrew, by the way.
Including Hebrew, that all of a sudden this also means the same thing. No,
Right.
no, that's not.
Okay, here's another thing that's really interesting. So, in chapter 4, verse 25, this goes along with Seth, right? Seth, it literally says in 25, Adam was intimate with his wife again. She gave birth to a son. She named him Seth.
Yeah.
For God has appointed me another seed in place of Abel, since Cain killed him. It literally uses
Yeah,
the word
right there in
appointed.
front of our face.
Right.
And then Enosh is next, right? For Enosh, it says, to Seth also was born a son. He named him Enosh. Then people began to call on Adonai's name, which for that it's mortal. So
And it makes sense.
maybe because they realize the realization that they're mortal and they need God,
Yeah.
right?
Maybe. That's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting
And then
point.
Kenan, they bring the sorrow because they realize that they are a land without God. Let's see, where's the talk? Kenan lives under the father Michal. It doesn't say much of Kenan,
No, it doesn't.
but I'm actually going to do a little bit of digging, see what I can find here.
This is beautiful.
Let's see what a little bit. Okay, so according to Kenan, was the son of Enosh and grandson of Set, born when Enosh was 9 years old. Kenan fathered Mahel and 7 years old. Other sons and daughters of Kenan before he died. Doesn't really say.
Well, I mean, so what I'll say is like, yes, there's intersections within the scripture to kind of hint towards some of those things, but I don't think that God will like. I don't necessarily think, nor do I think that he has to.
Yeah.
Kind of like
Yeah.
paint that bright of a picture, right? It'd almost be like
Well-
to nail on the head, and would make me think. That would make me more suspicious of it. The fact that it's like the only way to really discern that message for us is to look at the intersection between the names and what their meanings mean in English today, and the fact that it comes out with such a perfect sentence, more or less, right?
That speaks
Perfect
about
sentence
somebody
in the
that
sense that
lived.
I can read it and understand what it's trying to say. Is
Yeah.
To say that would be a coincidence is you'd
No,
have a better chance of convincing me that the sky is purple and I shit out rainbows. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not gonna happen. You know, it's just not gonna happen, man. So
No,
I mean,
I
man
definitely
appointed
agree.
mortal, sorrow, the blessed God shall come down, teaching, his death shall bring the despairing rest or comfort.
Yeah, sounds like Jesus, or at least
His
somebody
death
talking.
his death shall bring the low rest or comfort.
Okay, hey, here's something that's really interesting, right?
Yeah.
So Adam's name translated into Arabic, right, which I believe was the language of Jesus, means
It would be slightly different, but it's related. He actually spoke. Oh man,
I thought he spoke Hebrew and Greek. I know he definitely spoke
He
Greek.
spoke. Hold on, Aramaic. That was the language of the region.
Aramaic.
That's
You're right.
what it was. Aramaic and Greek.
It's
they spoke
very
Aramaic
similar to those languages.
Well,
It's
the
just
name
slight
is the
dialect
same. I believe the name this is actually the same, but
it's only slight
the meaning of it,
and things that are different. So
So what does Adam
The-
mean in Aramaic?
it means paradise, heaven, garden of a heaven,
Noah,
as in
or whom? Or
No,
Adam?
this is Adam. This is the beginning. So it also kind of correlates that
Interesting.
same message. It shows paradise, which that's what the Garden of Eden was considered, right? Was a paradise.
Right.
Yeah, man
Heaven,
was
Garden
appointed
of
to a
Eden.
mortal.
Mhm.
Then sadness happened in the. And even if you
So,
read
okay,
it like
so then
this
I'd be
way,
curious to see
like
what their names mean in Aramaic.
it,
Maybe
it
it
it's
also gives
interesting
us a message.
because like if you
it's
read it like
definitely
that way,
different.
it says like paradise was appointed to a mortal, right? Adam. Sorrow happened. So then the blessed God shall come down, teaching his death, that shall bring the
Well, but
despairing rest.
maybe
Like
we're
it's so
making the
weird how you
assumption,
can
right? We're
read it in
using the
different ways and it
Aramaic.
makes sense.
We're using Aramaic for the first
With
part and not the rest. So
well,
it could be
and that's what I'm
giving us two
saying.
different messages in two different
It
languages.
could be too. I feel like it's so weird how even when you change it to a different you change the first word to a different language,
Yeah.
it still
No, yeah. I mean, it
makes
still
sense.
fits and it's still interesting, right? I would just be curious what the others.
So, as far as
Well,
Adam in Hebrew, Aramaic, Akkadian, and Arabic, the origin is Adam, meaning earth or soil. But it actually, wait, hold on. That's actually not right. From the University of Iowa, the man, essentially, is what it's saying. It means the man.
who? What does? Sorry.
Wait. In Aramaic, it can. There's I'm getting different ones. For this seems to be the most credible. Is in Hebrew, Aramaic, Akkadian, I can't pronounce that, but or Arabic, the origin is Adam, meaning earth or soil. Derives from okay, so yeah, Adan, Adio, Adem. The name derives from Adam, the name which God the Father used to refer to men and women, both male and female, according to the Hebrew Bible. No, doesn't seem right. He didn't refer to them both as the same thing, which in turn derived from the noun Adama, meaning soil or earth. When used as noun, means man or humanity. Oh, there we go. As when used as a noun, and it shows it in Aramaic, the Aramaic language means man, or it shows Adam. It translates into their writing, means man or humanity. Which, dude, I mean, that's enough to. I mean, right there is enough to. It almost seems like in every language I'm looking this up in, it all points back to the same
Yeah,
meaning.
Aramaic seemed to point towards Seth still meaning appointed.
Well,
Or
Aramaic
something
is,
thereabout.
as far as I understand, Aramaic is heavily rooted in Hebrew
Yeah, Aramaic I think predates Hebrew,
or Hebrews,
or
well, then
close
Hebrews
thereabout.
date,
Anyways,
then Hebrews, then
they're
the other way
all
around.
in
Whatever.
the same region, right?
Well,
They're all
and
very
you know
Yeah.
what's really interesting about all this too is when you go down into Cain's, well, actually, after Noah. Sorry, it's not even Cain, but after Noah, after his soothing sacrifice and the dispersion of Noah's family, it says that whenever they dispersed, in I think chapter 10, when it talks about it, it says according to their languages.
right.
Right. So that at this point, they separated based on what language they spoke. I think that's what that means. Um, these are the families of the sons of Noah according to their genealogies in their nations, and from the nations were dispersed on the earth after the flood. And you know what's crazy about Enoch is it says teaching Enoch was a great teacher.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of known, right? Like
Well,
in his stories.
one thing I guess is apparently is that um I guess Arabic and Hebrew are similar, but they do not derive from one another. That they are derived from another language or group of languages that are much older than them. Um,
Are you saying Arabic or Aramaic?
Arabic and Hebrew.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
look up
So
Aramaic.
Aramaic is the language that
Yeah.
Let me
we were
look at
talking
Aramaic
about.
then. Is
Huh.
Hebrew derived from Aramaic?
And it may not be. I know it's from the same region.
The
know.
sister languages, this comparison is also valid for Hebrew, Aramaic. They're both descendant from the same root. So I guess they could. I guess because it's this. I have so something said that ancient Hebrew comes from the Canaanite region, while Aramaic comes from the ancient region of Aram.
Right. Yeah. So
And
from
then
my understanding, right, they sound very similar. It's just slight differences in how they structure
which
their
makes sense.
sentences, and some of their words sound slightly different.
And Aram was Shem's son. Aram, Aram.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's Shen's son. And they're just so Eber because the land was divided.
and
And
then
yeah,
apparently Hebrew comes from Canaan. Is it, or at least from the Canaan's
that's
area.
crazy, dude. How like these
Area.
Yeah.
different sons and daughters and like basically family, right? By how they developed. I wonder if it was just. I mean, it says here that the land of Aram's sons were Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash, but it says that um, because in his days the land was divided, his brother's name was Jokin. Jokin father the Eastern Hill Country. Eastern Hill Country. Either way, it's just crazy that they were developing their own languages and they were basically moving across,
Well, I mean, you
Earth.
could see that even today, right? Like if you have a family member that lives down south and a family member that lives up north, right? Like they talk differently, right? Like they sound
Right.
differently, they use different verbiage. So I mean,
Oh yeah.
it definitely doesn't
Well,
surprise me that
well, I
they have,
found
because
a
like
little.
even like Aramaic, like so let's say directly speaking, Aramaic does come from whomever you mentioned, Irad, I think, and
Aram.
uh, Hebrew comes directly from the descendants of Cain. Um, then I mean, still, like that would still make sense. That even
Yeah.
like
Well, I
it
found
would
a
make
little
sense.
picture diagram that apparently says it started with East Semitic and then there was Central Semitic. So we'll focus on the Central Semitic. So apparently Central Semitic split off into Northwest Semitic and Arabic, and then Northwest Semitic split off into Canaanite and Aramaic. And then from Canaanite went to Hebrew, and then Aramaic went from the Middle Aramaic and then Eastern Aramaic, um, which is interesting.
Yeah.
If it's any way to be true. Let me see if I see some other things that reinforce that maybe. So Pro-Semitic, Eastern Semitic. So there's Arabic, Hebrew comes from Canaanite, right? And then Aramaic also comes from the Northwest Semite. Interesting. But they definitely seem to come from they definitely seem to be just parts of something far older than even themselves.
Right. Yeah, of that I have
That's
zero doubt.
That's crazy. Let me see if I can enlarge this picture of the Semitic languages.
Hey, and what a find, by the way, Matt. That's really cool.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Evidences of design. I mean, it's definitely it kind of like it shows that God multiple times in Genesis, and this is incredible. But even when we talked about the crushing of the head and the bruising of the heel, right? Like it's like God has a plan, right? And he works in mysterious ways, and that is really cool to kind of uncover some of that. And on that note, I think that if we wouldn't have decided to ask questions or in our conversations right now with each other, like if we wouldn't have like I don't know if you remember Stampy, but you felt like you were kind of going on a weird tangent, right? And you're like, I don't know, this feels weird. Maybe I'm just overthinking this. And from that very idea that you had about the lineage and the differences, we created this entire new understanding that is and then with Matt finding this and us kind of connecting the dots with the names. I mean, dude, that's incredible. And I think that just kind of goes to show that I've always said the Bible is a book of riddles, which I don't mean that in like it's just a book of jokes. It's more of like you really have to meditate on the scriptures, right? Like it
Yeah.
says, it instructs us to do that. And
Necessitates it. If you look at it and read it at face value, sure you'll get the gist. But if you look at it and you study it and you read it, then you'd be
You
surprised.
you might be able to understand it.
Like I've
oh,
read
dude, like
that part of Genesis
this.
probably I don't know how many times, and it feels like I've never read the book of Genesis after what we just talked about. Feels like I
Yeah.
Dude,
have no
uh,
clue what was going on up to that point.
and it's crazy because the lineages is something, and I know this is
I
wrong, but
honestly
I've
cannot
always
stand.
overlooked.
Yes.
Yeah, I just be like, okay,
It
bunch
drives
of
me
names,
Yeah,
and
I
I
will
don't, I can't
skip it.
explain.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I've skipped it a couple times. Like I'm not reading
Dude,
this all
you
again.
know what I really look forward to studying is there's a book in Psalms that literally like the entire chapter is just son of Adam. Son. Oh wait, what chapter is that? What chapter is that? Is it Psalms or is it Proverbs? There's just the entire chapter is just son of Adam, son of Set, son of this, son of that, son of this. And it's an entire book.
Right.
What? Oh man, babe, do you know which one that is?
You said Psalm?
I think
I
it's
feel
in
like
Psalms,
an entire book, or was it?
or it's an entire chapter. I'm sorry.
I
I
feel
think
like
it's
I remember
multiple
reading that
chapters.
there's some like my
I
grandma was
definitely
like, you
remember
need to
that. I
read.
just don't
My grandma was like, you need to read Psalms. I remember reading Psalms, and I feel like I read Psalm, and then I was like, this is just a bunch of names.
know.
Okay, wait, hold on.
Doesn't help that there's like so many chapters. I'm looking forward to Isaiah. Whenever that'll probably be. Let's be honest, it'll probably take us 2 years to get there. But honestly, I don't care.
Yeah, there's a lot of lineages in the Bible. It's so funny how like I just went to Chronicles and it's crazy how so many names, dude.
And that's what I
Uh,
mean. I can't really think of very many examples where they match up to that degree that I can think of. But maybe there is, and again, it could just be ignorance. In fact, it's probably ignorance for sure on my part. But
I want to say from memory.
I've gone through, I think about chapter 75 back to I'm in the 30s right now, and I haven't seen one yet in Psalms.
Which ones have you looked through?
75 down to 26 currently. And I haven't seen any that are like lineages, unless I'm overlooking it. I don't think so.
Let me just look it up on here. I'll find it.
Psalm of David. I bet you it's in Proverbs, to be honest, but Psalms are
All right.
usually.
Well,
Wait, is it Matthew?
I'm assuming you guys are gonna keep on going. It's almost 10 o'clock for me.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be too much longer. I gotta work in a minute.
I gotta take a shower.
Well, hey, before you go, cause yeah, I'm kind of on my way out to. I haven't eaten dinner yet, which is crazy, but I didn't expect for us to go this long.
Yeah.
I might just have to skip it. I don't know, but real quick, while you guys are both here, Matt, I kind of wanted to talk about this after this, but I figured since Stampy's here, we can just discuss it together. But how did you guys feel? This is our first, Bible study, but how did you guys feel about reading our set amount of chapters and then reviewing? Or do you think it would be more beneficial for us to read a chapter and review that chapter and then move to the next one?
I think it's funny you say that because I think given through some of the chapters, I think it's for the most part. I think like a 5 should be the most, but also discernment between like if there's a chapter that's pretty lengthy and or maybe there's a lot in it at just at that one time, it might be okay. I mean, it might not be a bad deal to be like, okay, this one chapter was a lot. Let's talk about this before we move on, and then But I think like a 5 is definitely I think is a nice summary if it's kept like the way the first 10 chapters have been. it's not a whole lot in one, but altogether it makes up for a decent discussion. But we will get to places where, like, one chapter, and you're just like, oh, it's a long chapter,
Right.
Yeah.
a long chapter right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll get 5 and then talk about it, unless like.
And there's gonna be
you said.
points like I think there's a book I can't remember. There's a book in the Old Testament. It's about a woman. Um, I can't remember her name right now, but like a lot of, or at least I felt like a lot of the chapter, like it's good to know like what was happening, but I didn't think there was a lot to to speak upon, if that made sense. Because it seemed to be like, um, I guess the best way I could put it is like if you ever watch a TV show and you have like filler episodes in between what's happening that's important, and then there's just stuff to be put there so that like it's there, but it's not necessarily part of the whole picture.
Yeah, I would agree with you
Side
if we hadn't just had the conversation that we did about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying from past
Yeah.
experience. So I don't know. I don't know if we'll hit that again or not. I can't remember her
Right.
name, but I felt like I was like I'm reading her book, and I'm like I read all this stuff. I'm like, and it might have just been the fact that I had a lack of understanding of what was going on, so that might be why I didn't have much to say upon it.
Right.
So, but I definitely think 5 should be the max, or at least
Yeah,
right now.
I mean, if you had asked me about 3 hours and 43 minutes ago what my thought process was on lineages, I would have been like, I don't really care for them. But now it's
That's why I'm
easily one of
so
the most
like.
impactful things that I may have ever read in the Bible.
Oh, dude, and we're just in Genesis. Like I wanted to dissect like from obviously once we get through Genesis and all that. But, like I look forward to dissecting uh so much more. Like we're just in the very beginning, like you
This
said in the
makes me
beginning, man. This is
excited for
just the anchor point. This is the beginning of the story. You know what I mean? And
This
Yeah, we
makes me
talked like
excited
an
for the whole
hour
book.
on one chapter.
Yeah.
We were like chapter. Most of that took place in chapter 4 and chapter 5 of
Yeah,
Genesis.
chapter 4, 5. Because it's fun. Because the last couple chapters shot us right back to the beginning, and I feel like
Oh yeah.
that's gonna happen quite a bit as we're reading.
Right.
Is we're gonna see stuff, and it's like, hey, you remember 5 books ago? I'm like, no, that was like 7 months ago. What are you talking about?
Right, which is why I like that we did like the 5. We talked about it, got some ideas, and then we read 5 more, and then we talked about it again, which kind of allowed us to
Yeah.
already have that groundwork and understanding to be able to build upon those
Right,
ideas
right.
as well as add to those.
Which is
Yeah, because
definitely
like you're
important.
saying, to expand on that, even like there's a lot of chapters, and like it's very hard just to read a verse, right? It's like you need some context. You need to go
You
back.
definitely
So,
context is so important.
Yeah, it's like looking at a
yeah.
picture like all the way zoomed in, right? It's like
Like,
zoom that picture all the way in, and
Zoom
then
out.
you're like, okay, now tell me what this picture's of.
because
It's
there's
like, homie, I could see
there's a
2
lot of
pixels.
yeah. 'Cause
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that
yeah.
sound real sweet in the Bible when you read them on its own. Like,
Right.
like I know one thing that as I gotten older, like I slightly get frustrated is like when I hear preachers go like talking about like God is slaying all the giants in your life, which may be true, but like you're taking a portion of David's story, which like we can apply these things to our lives. That's the human skill when it comes to literature understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not for everyone. Like God talks about how he has specific things and tasks and troubles for each person.
Right.
So we shouldn't go on a mass spray about one couple of like we should be able to take contexts, be able to relate and apply them to our lives, and or understand that they may not apply to our lives or even in the current state of which what we're living in.
Right.
Um, um, I had something else I was going on top of that, but I don't know. But yeah,
I agree. Amen.
context is because and there's some stuff that doesn't make sense without context. Like for example, what I was talking about earlier with the whole dynasty thing. When you just read the dynasty, it's like this guy like lived, then died, and then lived again. What? But then when you read the whole context, you understand that it talks about the dynasty of the whole family, and then inside of the family, each individual rules of each family member, and so that's why the name is repeated, because the family's under the whole name, and then that guy has the name of the family.
Right.
Right.
And
Right.
so, because I was like, oh, when I first heard it, I was like, that's weird. And then it's, I think right after it, it's like, you need context matters. I was like, it makes me laugh thinking of it right again, how spontaneous it was, right?
Right. Well, I love it. I agree with you guys. I felt the same way. I felt like definitely getting the context, like you're saying, Stampy, is super important. And I liked that we know, because this is us. This is our study. We're not on nobody's schedule. If we have to sit down for an hour, like we just did, an hour and a half, and discuss one verse and break it down, I'm more than willing. I don't care how long it takes us to read Genesis. If we're learning and we're being inspired like tonight, then I'm down for the long run anyways, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
hard to argue that that's what God wants.
Yeah, absolutely. And also too, we're given the 5 chapters. If we want to go all the way back to chapter 1 and we're in chapter 30, who cares? It's
Oh,
us.
yeah.
It's our
Because
study.
if it takes us years to go through the Bible, right? It's far better to take a long time to understand than to read it thousands of times over and not know what it says. 'Cause then you just wasted
Mhm.
your time. So,
Well, I would like to say that we go into, if I may, I would like
yes.
to say that we should do our best to go into every study, just like we did this one, and kind of I learned a little bit of new ways to study, I guess, if for lack of a better term, but like the way we dove into this and we just learned something monumental, I think that is just going to be so crucial going forward. And like, don't like no, like even because like I'll say it again, Stampy, like you were kind of like, I think I'm off on a weird thing, but that weird thing that you thought that stone you overturned led into this entire discussion. You know what I'm saying? That's the beauty of it. It works. God works in mysterious ways, and
Oh, yeah.
so.
And which is why,
Uh,
I mean, to point out the whole reason that we did this, right, is like I love Jordan Peterson and all the fellas that were breaking that down, but I don't think that would ever be possible doing the old method. You know what I mean?
oh yeah,
So it
no,
makes me sad that we didn't think of that sooner, but it also makes me sad for the people that aren't here. So I feel like
yeah,
I don't know, dude. Like that whole lineage thing, man. When I saw that, I almost like second guessed
right,
myself and was like, I have to be full of crap, right? But then I kept looking at it, and I was
right.
like, and then
Mhm.
like that whole conversation was just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It
And
was the most crazy
what
and like almost beautiful
I,
conversations I've almost ever
it's
had.
Mhm.
it's most definitely beautiful, because I think especially when it comes to God, the way the world works is it tries to hide things. It tries to hide the things that are going to be
Mhm.
beneficial in any form away from us when it comes to our relationship with Him.
Mhm.
And so, but it can't hide it to the point where if you go out and look for it, eventually you will find it.
Right.
And
Right.
I don't know. Like, man, I have a hard time speaking. What the heck?
Oh, you're
Hey, that's all
Um,
right, dude. I know. I mean, you're tired, and the last thing I'll say is, I mean, even with the Jordan Peterson thing, Matt, I think we both were in agreement that we wanted to, use someone who we thought everyone could relate to, and we knew. And I think it was going to end. It was going to come to this either way. I think that
no,
the Holy
for
Spirit
sure.
was going to, this isn't either one of us. It's God, and I think that he was gonna lead us to this path either way. And um, I think that we were definitely trying our best to just get people involved. And Stampy, I just want to say thank you, man, for showing up and
oh,
being a
thank you
part
guys
of
for
it.
having
Because
me.
I agree with Matt. This was a beautiful
Breaks my
discussion,
heart for
and
people that missed
Yeah,
that
I got.
conversation.
I know.
I'm glad that I
So
recorded it. I've got 4 hours worth of recording.
we're talking about
Oh yeah,
the George Peterson video, right?
Yeah, just
the
like
Or
Jordan
the
is it?
Peterson. Yeah.
Exodus series.
Okay. Okay.
So
I
I'm
just
glad that you know.
it is good because even then, like, you'll get to come back and look at it. And I
Right.
like having it because I got home, I got off work, I went to go pay on my furniture, and then went to go get my dad food, and then we ate, and I'm like, okay, what else do I gotta do? So I come in here to check my daily news and get ready to go take a shower, and I'm like, oh, the Bible study. So now I get here, and now I have to take a shower and go straight to bed, and it's about to be cold because it's cold.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't think
What?
just one last thing. I know everybody. I'm ready to get out of here too. My brain's tired, but I've never heard anybody point any of that out.
Never. This is all new. This is all
names,
very new.
The names?
Yeah, like the connections.
No, I've
never
never
heard of.
Yeah, I've
Like
never
the
heard of
hidden
it.
meaning behind like from the Aramaic or Hebrew to English.
This is just the beginning. This is just the freaking beginning, guys. 'Cause I really feel like I said, if we go into,
Yes.
you know what I'm saying? Like this is just the very beginning. There's so many more lineages that we get to
yeah, no,
look into in
literally,
the
Well,
and-
not only
future.
that, but the hidden things. Someone showed a Bible in Hebrew that, like, every seventh letter, all the way through
Oh yeah,
Genesis
it
to
I
Revelation.
saw that, but I tried to look at that, and it didn't seem to do that for me.
I'm being honestly, I can't read Hebrew. It looks
It's
like
called,
lines for me, so
what is that
I can't even
called?
check it. But
It's
yes,
it's called data it's like something, but like there was a certain code that there's no way possible it could have happened, but it like man.
Well, I've seen a
Yeah, I
couple.
don't-
There was the one where it said like that every, I think it was like 50th letter. There was like the Yahweh reference.
yes, I think I feel like it
There's
was a
also
Yahweh
one where it's, what is it? It's 7. There's a number sequence 7654 or some number sequence like that as well. That there was some correlation between something like that and some.
Well, I
some
think.
acronyms.
Oh, that's right. It was significant events. Apparently, the Bible code, also as known as the Torah code, was a proponent set of encoded words within the Hebrew text of the Torah that, according to the proponents, has predicted significant historical events,
Right.
like the assassination of the Israel Prime Minister, the Gulf War,
I think
the
I saw a
like
video on that.
all these things. And there's a book called the Bible Code, and it's I forget the term for it.
Prophesied.
But uh, no, the term for the type of code it is, like how they found it. They weren't able to find it this easily until they used a
specific
computer.
method.
It was a computer that found it. It's called like something dot coding
But
or something like
But
that.
I think we're gonna find stuff similar to that because
Oh yeah.
I'm probably gonna ask some stupid question again, and then all of a sudden we're down the rabbit hole.
Well, I
we
mean,
go.
clearly it wasn't stupid, right?
Well, not stupid as in stupid, but it's gonna sound like, or at least to me, it's gonna sound like.
Listen,
Like
I mean, when
a
I was looking
nonsensical
over that
question?
and I was seeing those, and I was seeing like breaking down like
The
the
names.
2 Enochs, and then I'm looking and I'm like, man, I thought I was absolutely insane. So
No, agreed.
Next time we talk about this in about 7 months, you're like, I got a webcam, just show you my room, and it's like map points all over the place, and I look like a mad scientist coming over here, like, I think I found it,
Right.
everything.
Right. Well, hey, Stimpy, hey man, get some rest, man.
You guys
And
as well. You better be safe, especially if it's going to be snowing. I know it's supposed to ice for me pretty soon.
yeah, it will be.
Well, it's been windy, but
It will be.
All right.
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
catch
All right,
you
brothers.
guys on the flip side.
yeah, good night.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hey, Matt. Just want to say, great chat, brother. Beautiful study.
Thank you, everybody, for watching tonight. I think that we had some amazingly impactful conversations during the course of this Bible study. If you'd like to take part in future Bible studies, you can find the Discord link in the description. We look forward to hopefully seeing you there, and thank you for your time. Bye-bye.